How's it going, everybody? We are here for an evening edition. This is a very spicy, sultry edition of the Artisans of Steel podcast with my dear friend Josh Weston. But before we get to Josh, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody over on the Patreon for their support, uh, especially our super sponsors, who I'll talk about right now. But if you want to be part of the Patreon, part of these conversations, and have a chance to kind of help drive the conversation here while I'm recording these live, you can go to the Patreon, look up Malmasi Fire Arts, join at the illuminated individual level or higher, and you can be part of the conversations and get to ask questions of these insanely talented people that I get to talk to, and who I'm very fortunate to call my friends. And before we get to our guest, I want to talk about our super sponsors. This month we have Gabe Fletcher of Anchorage Brewing. Gabe is a great guy. He's been making for a couple of years now. He's really um, just leaps and bounds from knowing nothing. Has really gone like way farther than I've seen anybody, I think, advance in such a short period of time. He He's making really awesome Damascus. He's doing all these really great beer collaborations with makers. He just released, I believe, the Salem Straub collaboration, as well as the Joshua Prince collaboration just before that. He's got a couple more coming up with Will Stelter, I believe, as well as Adam DeRosiers. You can go find all that information about those collaborations, see his work over on his Instagram. It is at Anchorage Forge. And he does these beer collaborations because he is the owner, operator, and head brewer of Anchorage Brewing up in Anchorage, Alaska. Anchorage Brewing beers are some of the best beers I've ever had in my entire life. And so if you go to the local market, you should be able to find them. If you don't see them, ask the buyer to get those beers in because they are awesomely delicious. Okay, next up we have Lawrence Lake. He is the proprietor of Maritime Knife Supply on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at maritimenifesupply.com. At Maritime Knife Supply, where you can also find and order items from them, from him at maritimenifesupply.com, where you can get everything from grinders and belts and all kinds of big tools, little tools, um, any kind of consumables, pins, handles, materials, whatever you need for your knife making journey. And if there's something there or if something's missing from his inventory that you need for your process, get a hold of him, let him know, and he can probably find it and source it. And because I'm guessing you're probably not the only one that needs this thing, whatever it is, you cannot find on his site. So again, go to maritimenifesupply.com where you can get all your knife making needs met. Excuse me. Next up, we have Dan Hubbs. He is 6'6" Mountain Knives on Instagram and Facebook. He's a great guy. I was just actually looking through some old photos from when he was here in Olympia, Washington, taking a course with me and a few other makers around Damascus. And he's just a really great guy doing solid work. He does mostly EDCs. He's branching out, and I think into chef's knives a little bit more, but he does a phenomenal job getting excellent finishes on his knives. He's also been doing a lot of tutorial stuff on his Instagram feed. So go check him out, follow him and what he's doing, and see what he's been working on over at 6'6" Mountain Knives. All right, next is Russell Tinsley. He is Can't Make Knives on Instagram. That's his maker page. He is also a brewer. He owns Ouzel Finch Beers in Virginia. That's OOZLE Finch Beers on Instagram, as well as the Nost Brewing Project. That's NOST Brewing Project. They have a new beer. It's a key lime beer. The Ouzel Finch does all kinds of wild flavors way outside of the box kind of beers, but they're all super delicious. And I haven't had one I didn't like or didn't enjoy. And so they have the key lime pie one going right now, and key lime pie is like one of my favorite. They actually had I really love citrusy stuff, and so they also had a lemon bar a while back. I didn't get a hold of that one, but I'm hoping to make my way out to the West Coast, down in Virginia and Maryland area. Hopefully in the not too distant future, to teach some classes, and hopefully I can get over to Ouzel Finch, get some of those beers. Again, go to your local beer market, see if they got them. If they don't have the Ouzel Finch or the Nos Brewing Project beers, talk to the local or to the buyer of the store. get them to get those beers in. All of the beers that they brew there are awesome. They're very delicious. Very Nos brewing means nostalgia is like the Greek, I think it's the Greek or Latin base for nostalgia. So the Nos Brewing Project is very nostalgic, but like beers that you maybe the first beers you ever tasted. It's nostalgic in that way, but brewed with really high quality ingredients, and they're super delicious. So go get yourself some Ouzel Finch beers and Nos Brewing Project, and go follow Russell on his Instagram at Can't Make Knives. And then finally, our super sponsor, Mr. Josh A. Weston. You can find him on Instagram, Josh A. Weston on Instagram, as well as at Dragon Forge EXP. He's part of the Dragon Forge experience, where they have a bunch of, we're going to get into the conversation. He's going to explain it in much more detail, but basically they have these amazing forges set up at various events and festivals around the country where you can forge out of the mouth of a dragon. It's so freaking cool. I want to go do it, and I want my kid wants to do it so bad. So we're talking to Josh about trying to get together and doing something like that. But Josh also, now I'm getting to my intro. Josh is also just a really creative guy in general. I've been very fortunate to get to know him over the years. I didn't know who he was until let's see, the first time I became aware of Josh's work was like in 2012 or 13. I was just like looking around the internet trying to find interesting things and forging projects, and I came across a lot of railroad spike stuff, and I liked the idea of recycling metal, but a lot of them were kind of lame. But I came across this one that I was really impressed with. It was very clean, and it was a railroad spike tomahawk, and he had the whole like breakdown and these various types of heads that you could forge. And it was by the Pixel Smith, and I didn't know who the hell that was. And there wasn't a lot of pictures, or at least I couldn't find any on the internet. And so a few years go by, I'm on Forge and Fire, and then I think Josh is either in that same season, can't remember if he's in or in a subsequent season, but he's also on Forge and Fire, and he's the Pixel Smith. I was like, holy shit, that's the guy. and and since then we've met through Forge and Fire. We met and connected, and he and I've just kind of been buddies since then, and I'm very thankful to have him as a friend and a person I can lean on from time to time and ask questions in regards to design, especially because he comes from a background of graphic arts and design, and we're also going to get into that. And so I'm really excited to have him on the show. I'm going to pull him out of the green room right now so we can get chatting with him. Josh, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation tonight.
Dude, absolutely my pleasure. I'm like stoked to be here. I'm
Yeah,
really happy.
I'm always really happy to see you, especially when we see each other at events. Because I was just like, I give you a great big hug, and usually a big kiss on the cheek.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've had one of your kisses though. So
I know.
we have to.
We gotta fix that.
Yeah.
Well, I saw you at Blade in June, didn't I? Are you gonna be at Blade again?
No, I missed June this year. It was.
Oh, you did miss June. Okay.
I was in
Oh,
Europe.
that's right. I remember
family
that.
on a vacation, like a long one.
Yeah.
My two oldest graduated high school, so we decided to like finally go and take them to see more of the world.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
That's excellent.
So much really great art in all different genres all around the globe.
Whoa. Where did you guys go?
We went to Iceland and then to England. We went to London. I have a niece in London. So we went there for a couple days, and then we took a sleeper train, my first time on a sleeper train, crazy, up to Scotland. Did 3 days or so in Scotland, went to Culloden, the battlefield there, which was really awesome. And
like from Outlander.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We stayed in a clan house, not an American type clan house, a Scottish clan house. I want to be very clear about that.
Yes, like was it the Macintosh? Who was it?
It was. I don't remember.
Campbell's?
I didn't like it. It was.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it. I
Okay.
did like the food, and I liked haggis, actually, and one of the
Haggis
best
is great.
burgers. Yeah, it was delicious. I ate it everywhere I could order it in Scotland.
Yeah.
I don't know why people don't like it. Maybe because they know what it is? I don't know, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it
For me,
tastes
it's
good.
the texture and the flavor. If those work, I'm good.
Yeah, I think that meal, to me, it works. I
Sure.
understand it. I don't know. So after Scotland, we I guess we had to go back to England because the train went up and it went back down. So we went back down to
Sure.
London, flew out of London to Prague. My sister and her family
Oh,
lived
wow.
there, and my oldest niece had just gotten married. We had missed her wedding because I had a my second child was graduating high school and one was going into ninth grade, so we had an eighth grade graduation. Anyhow, we couldn't go to the wedding, so we had a visit afterward, and they live in Czech in a little town, Yilava. I don't know. I can't say it. I don't speak that language. But it was so beautiful and so nice. And we went into this old cathedral in this town, and it's very tall, um, which I don't particularly love man-made heights. I love flying. I just don't like being on tall man-made structures.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, water parks are the worst thing for me. I hate them. I start thinking about rusty bolts and
Oh,
like
God.
connections or rotten wood, and then I can't. I just like freeze up. Anyhow,
You've
we
watched
walk.
too many of the, Final Destination
Yes,
movies.
this is exactly what I've done. But we get all the way to the top of this. We're looking at the roof and the construction and the tiles, and I'm always looking to apply things to my builds, and one of the builds that I have is in Texas, and we have these cool buildings, and I that I designed,
Yeah.
and I made really big air that I didn't know until it rained for the first time.
Oh,
And we have these nice arches in the middle, and as soon as it rains, it just dumps all of the water from the building, from the two different side roofs, collect off this one and land on anyone who's standing there, which is
right.
our customers.
Yeah.
So they're
Hope you
getting
don't
so
mind.
so I went and I bought some cheap Lowe's gutters and I put them up really fast to move the rain, and it solved most of the problem.
I gotcha.
But I don't want cheap Lowe's gutters on these buildings that are supposed to look like Nordic stainless churches, you know. So
Sure.
uh, I get up to the top of this, and I didn't want to go to the top of it. Yeah, those arches right in the middle, they don't have gutter. Well, they do. You can't see that photo doesn't show the gutter problem, but it's right at the bottom of those arches. There it is. And yeah, that's it there.
So where the outer ones meet the center one, it just
Exactly.
just
Mhm,
right
because
on top.
the center one protrudes forward.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
I see. Oh my gosh. Alright.
yeah. So we get up there and there's these beautiful, yeah, right there at the bottom of that.
Yep.
I now have a gutter. There's a little gutter in that photo there that you
Oh,
can
yeah,
see.
you can barely see it. I didn't
You
even
barely
notice
see
it.
it. Yeah, and that has a it still just pours a big like dump out.
Yeah.
So if you're standing there, you're just gonna get a face full of it. It's real fun. Uh,
It should go to a barrel for quenching, right?
right, exactly. That's what I want to do is I want to put a downspout on there that has a big rain bucket. And then we don't have to because we don't have water on the property. We have to go get our quench buckets filled
Oh,
um,
geez.
behind the mead station. And
Okay.
anyhow, there's these copper dragon downspouts, open mouth, like
Oh,
all
yeah.
this cool, like it's kind of rough, but they're beautifully done, really, really nicely crafted, and they're 500 some years old. And I'm like, that's exactly it. And I get up there and I take a picture, and I'm like, I'm just feeling good enough to take a picture, and that motherfucking bell rings, and that whole top of that cathedral, and I'm up there in the top bell tower, and I'm just like
Oh my
holding
god.
onto the things, and my family's right around the corner taking videos of me grabbing the grates of the floor,
Right.
uh, hoping I don't fall off. But
I
that
can't
was
even imagine how horrendous that sound has gotta be.
it's so loud. You can't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Prague was really great. I like that. Didn't love driving in Prague, but you know, you driving in uh foreign language speaking countries is difficult. Yeah, so it looks a lot like that. Those are pretty cool. And so I've been sketching it.
Sure. Well, and I
Yeah.
just did a Google search.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these different
So that's
sprouts came
that's
out.
what I got to do. I've got to make those this next year. I have to make dragon-headed downspouts.
That's a fun one like
That
that.
one's really interesting.
Just
Yeah.
yelling, just like, ah!
Yeah. My kids found a picture. There's like a weird, gnarly gargoyle, human-y looking thing, and it's all like curled up in this like really, and they love to send it. And they're like, every time I sneeze, we have a text chat, and they put
Oh,
that
geez.
picture, and they just like, and it just says dad when he sneezes. It's terrible.
Just curled up into like this golem
Yes.
creature.
Oh, but no, it was really cool, and we went from Czech to Austria, and we stayed in the Dolomites there. And my 18-year-old was really upset that she had to stay in a ski-in, ski-out resort in June because there was no snow, and she likes to snowboard. So she's like,
uh
this is torture, and you must take me back in the wintertime.
right. Just like, why are we here? And it's all this, it's dirt. This is
Yeah,
bullshit, Dad.
yeah. Austria was really
Thanks a
cool.
lot for I love this. This is cool, but this is bullshit.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, thanks for letting me see what the terrain would be like.
Nothing
Yeah.
like seeing a bunch of little stumps and, rocks and shit.
Well, I rented a fast vehicle and I drove really quickly through the mountains, and that
Okay.
seemed to help. Yeah, it made up for it.
Okay. Yeah,
And she
how,
could
how
drink.
was that?
It's legal drinking age there, so she
Right.
had a lot of fun. She doesn't like beer, is what she learned on that trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did she get just motion sick or something? Or like
No,
how'd she discover?
she just couldn't get it down. You
Sure.
know, she doesn't like to. She was trying. She did a really good job. She tried real hard.
Sure.
It was real honorable. She also found out she didn't like schnapps either. I'm like, what do you like? Of course, so German schnapps are
Water's great.
yeah, the water, yeah, sparkling water everywhere.
Yeah.
But that was fun. One of the things I really liked about Austria, aside we went to this waterfall that looked like dragons carved it out of the rocks. But I ended up getting to go to Hallstatt, which I really love Hallstatt.
Oh,
The weaponry and the Bronze Age artifacts and the history of that town has always those weapons just kind of like speak to me in a weird way. And
yeah.
I didn't even know we were going there. Like we went to this place in Austria. I didn't pay attention. My wife planned most of the trip, and I was like, "Cool, we're going to Austria. Love it." I was looking at the map. We were going from one place to the other, and I saw Hallstatt pop up, and I'm like, "It's 11 miles away. I'm going." So we had one down day, and I go, "Can we please, instead of going back into Salzburg or wherever, I
Sure.
think that was our next closest city, that we decided that we would deviate and go to Hallstatt, which has basically zero parking. It's very frustrating
Oh,
to go to
cool.
Hallstatt. Yeah. So if you're going, try to plan ahead for parking. Uh,
Plan on walking a few blocks.
yes,
A couple
or
miles.
like 2 miles
Yeah.
with 5 children. It was very fun. Uh,
Um, real quick, Holstein. So,
yeah,
is that a town? Is it a museum? Is a town known
both.
for what's it known
So
for? I don't
there
know
are
anything.
I think it's like 5,000 years of archaeological history in Hallstatt, Germany, and
What?
or Austria. Yeah, 5,000. Yeah, it is like one of the oldest documented inhabitable places in Europe. It was a salt mining town on these lakes, and the salt is way up in the mountains. I don't even know how they did it,
Oh
but the
wow,
whole
it's
place is
gorgeous.
amazing. It's like one of the most beautiful places you've ever seen,
Yeah, it's
and it's
stunning.
like this sleepy little mountain lake town.
Yeah.
It's like there's barely enough room for this town to exist off the side of this mountain before it turns into a lake. Yeah, and it's like this beautiful blue-green, pristine water. We just stand at the edge of it and watch the fish swim by. The air was
Holy shit, that's a hell
delicious
of a
to breathe.
lookout.
Yeah, it
That
was
beautiful.
really cool. And of course, the museum was great, and they had it, a lot of their antiquities have been moved off to bigger museums, but they did have a lot
I
of
got you.
really cool pieces as well.
Yeah.
And I got to see some really ancient bronze swords that I've been looking at online for years, and I got to
Mm.
video around them. And what I couldn't believe is that these are bronze and how thin they are, and the
Oh,
geometry and the lines and the way that they use um, I don't know how else to say it, but they're using creases to create strength, like micro creases and channels
yeah.
to add rigidity to thinness. And
Yeah.
like they're thinner than some of the steel swords and things that I've made that I'm like, this has got to be real close to historical. And I'm looking at these, holy shit. And they were used things, you know?
That's
It's
amazing. I
yeah,
was shocked when I was in Ireland was the first time I ever I mean, I guess probably at the Met in New York. I definitely saw some Bronze Age stuff, but when I was in Ireland, it was the first time I ever really, like, saw a lot of Celtic
yeah,
bronze weapons, and I was shocked. I was, 1, by the level of quality in the manufacture, but 2, like,
yeah.
the details blew me away. I had
They did
no
really
idea.
use, excuse me, open areas. You know, if there was a spot that you could fill with either an artistry or a function or double up a function art, they
Yeah,
did it. And I think that's really cool. I think that sometimes I I I like that. I want that in my personal art. I wish I
right.
had more time. Like I know I'm in this weird thing where I feel like that I feel like that one song, like I'm hunting down a dream. Um,
The
and it's
Tom
just
Petty
like
song, right?
Tom Petty. I'm just like chasing it down, right? And what I'm doing is I'm working until I can get to a time where I can take more time to do my work. But I have
Yeah,
to like, I feel like I've got to go so far before I can. I don't know. It's like it's this endless weird game, and I don't want to
sure.
say that I don't love the work that I'm doing. It is it's so cool. I mean, how cool is that? And you know those lines, they aren't just for fun. Those are
Right, no.
there for stability.
Well, what's interesting is, yeah, like, who's the guy that was like, "You know what? I noticed that this blade folded over really easy. What can we do to make it stronger?"
Let's try crease. I notice when I bend stuff, it's stiffer, you know?
Well, and if you think about it, like, where do you see creases like that? Like, without thinking about it, like, I would think animal bones, especially,
Yeah,
like, like, leg bones, arm bones, there's, like, these weird curves and lines in them,
yeah,
and they're strong as fuck, right? And
mhm,
so I wonder if some of that I mean, this is me totally conjecturing, but,
yeah,
inspiration maybe came from some of that because
yeah, that
bones
would
are
make a lot of
pretty
sense.
damn tough.
Mhm, yeah. It's some mind-blowing stuff that you see. I'm fortunate to be married to a woman who also likes museums. She wanted to be an anthropologist, so she
Oh,
likes the
cool.
study of people and culture,
For
and
sure.
so we can spend days in museums. And when we
Right?
went to Europe by ourselves, that's all we did. We hopped from museum to museum to museum,
Yeah.
and that was really, I don't know. I think it's cool what you can learn from the past, and I think you realize when you start digging back in the pages how little we know now.
Yeah.
Also, it's one of the things I actually really appreciate your work is and your approach to breaking down patterns, and I loved it. Years back when you were like, "Yeah, post any pattern, and I'll reverse engineer it for you." And I think that like the brain that you have to do that, the studying and the application and the time that you have had to have spent in manipulating patterns and playing with that. That's a lot of investment, and you
Yeah.
don't just wake up and understand that. You can't just go to a museum and see a few pieces and go, "Oh, I can recreate that now."
Oh, what they did here is blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I actually I tell this to my kid a lot, because he gets really hard on himself if he makes a mistake in any, like, while he's building Legos or drawing something, or he writes the word birthday wrong or something like that. Like, he gets really hard on himself. And I was like, to be good at anything or even great someday, you got to practice.
yeah,
And honestly, a lot of, and I've probably said this on this podcast a lot of times, but a lot of mistakes honestly are the starting point for growth, learning, wisdom to be birthed from. A lot of people want to avoid mistakes as much as they possibly can. And in some places that makes sense. But
yeah,
especially on a learning process, mistakes are part of the journey. They are just part of it.
yeah.
And
They're
in
really
every mistake is an opportunity to learn,
yeah,
and the reason I got good at reverse engineering patterns is because I made a lot of mistakes, and I tell them, I was like, "How do you think I got so good at making knives, at making Damascus, making steel and stuff like that, all these pattern steels?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, I was like, "I wasn't born with this ability. I learned from my mistakes."
mhm,
And I also happen to have a brain that also, like, thinks in very I can't, spatial awareness, 3D,
yeah, mhm,
um, and so those 2 things go together, my curiosity to understand how I made the mistake or where I screwed up, and then also my brain's ability to visualize really come together in a really great way so that I can do what I do with patterns.
yeah. And sometimes your mistake will lead to a new development down a
For
door
sure.
you didn't mean to go, and maybe you didn't get the pattern you wanted, but you got this other pattern that is a whole new thing, and
Yeah.
now you can replicate that mistake, and before you know it, everyone's gonna be copying your mistake because it's cool. It's such a cool.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happens or can happen when you are able to embrace your mistakes
Mhm.
and to face failure. I have guys that work with me that say to me, failure isn't an option. They say it, it's almost like a bragging point to them. And
Mm.
I, holy shit, like if failure isn't an option, I don't know
I'm
what you're
fucked.
doing. Like
I'm
it's like
fucked.
like I feel like most of what I do is just um it's I don't know. It's falling. It's not flying, but it's falling
Yeah.
in style, you know? So, like, and that's failing with some style or some grace
Yeah.
is
Well, and I guess
real.
it depends on how you define failure. Like, what's failure? Is it making a mistake? Is that a failure? Or because to me, failure would be completely giving up.
Yeah, not
At that
trying any.
point, and
Yeah,
it's just what it is.
yeah,
It's a complete failure. You give up and you move on in a different direction.
yeah,
But I think if you're making mistakes, mistakes are fine. Mistakes
yeah,
happen, and they're a really important part of the learning process. And I think for some reason, somewhere we've been taught or told or marketed or whatever that we're not supposed to be making mistakes. But the reality is, like, some of the best shit that exists in the world, especially creatively,
yeah,
were born from mistakes.
yeah, yeah,
That's where, turning lemons into lemonade,
yeah,
you know, diamonds in the rough, like, all of those come from the fact that, or even like the ugly duckling, right?
yeah,
Starts ugly, turns
yeah,
out gorgeous. Like, uh, these things come from places that we have to have a hard time to appreciate and earn the good time
yeah.
or rank,
We
whatever.
use, something like that endlessly with our customers, which we work with, people off the street, beginners, people who have never swung a hammer before in their
Sure.
life, carpenters. I had to throw that one in
I know how to swing a hammer.
there.
Do ya?
You know how to swing a 16-ounce framing hammer. It's very different. Shut the fuck
For hitting
up.
nails.
Yeah. But I tell them all the time, but like, it looks like shit until it doesn't. And
Oh,
as
yeah. Dude,
long
I
as it's
say that
and
too.
yeah, And that's it. That's the thing. It's like you're gonna go through 10 rounds of it looking garbage, and then at the end you're gonna go, wow, it's the thing.
Yeah,
It only happens at the end.
for sure. It's like, holy shit, where did that even come from? I had a friend hanging out with me in the shop one time, and I was forging. He's like, "You're forging a knife, right?" And I was like, "Trust me, it's gonna
It's
basically look like a fucking turd until like the last 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's gonna become a knife, and you're gonna be
Mhm.
like, holy shit, where did that come from? Like, did you switch that out with something else that was sitting nearby?"
Yeah,
And, and it happens every time.
yeah.
It's just
And
like
it
fighting this
seems
form.
counterintuitive, right? Like you get so many people that get out there and they think in heat number one, we're going to start with the point and we're going to do these things. And it's like, no, no, no. There's work to be done before we can make the knife. You know,
Yeah,
there's the breaking down of the piece and setting up your mass and being able to move the things where you want to get what your goal is.
for sure.
And that's a good thing to have is in general a goal. And some people love to just throw metal in a fire and pull it out, whack on it, see what happens, and let the metal speak to them.
Sure.
Um, and I understand free form play, and occasionally I will go out and do that also. But I have found I really like the sketching part. Obviously, with the artist designer background for me,
Yeah,
um, it's it's not just there's a functional part of it, but there's also a fun part of it for me to illustrate what I'm working on and work towards getting that. But then it can tell me where my skills are lacking because I have this, all right, I want a 2-inch heel and I want to, you know, if I'm making one of those Celt-Iberian knives and I've got one of those weird bulges in and a ring at
sure.
the end, and I know what I want my final shapes to be and where I'm starting at, I can take notes and I can see where I've gone off the mark so I know how to fix it.
Yep.
Or the next time I do it, I can hopefully get it closer to right or maybe eventually one day I'll forge a perfect piece. Um, and and that sketch to me is what sets the tone and it keeps me honest and it holds me accountable to what I'm doing. I can't just make it up and be like, oh yeah, like I meant to forge that. You know,
Yeah.
you don't know. You will go out there and you whack anything out, and you meant to forge a rapier, but you ended up with uh, a falchion or some shit like that. You know,
Right.
what good does that do you? Yeah, like and it's fun, like using markers. And there are times that I can't. I'm out and about. I'm traveling. I don't have access to a forge. I won't be back for a week or so.
Right.
I have to have my art outlet. So coffee and a sketch in the morning. If I'm going to take time to drink, I'm going to take time to draw.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. No, and I love, and that's what I really love about your process is that getting ideas on paper are a big part of your process. And I think I'm attracted to it because it's also part of my process. But I love, like, historically speaking, like seeing journals of
Yeah,
creatives, like out of Da Vinci's stuff or out of like sketches from Picasso
mm,
or you know, all any you can Van Gogh, like all these different artists throughout time, they go through a process of kind of visualizing the thing until they finally do the final product.
yeah,
Whether it's a painting, whether it's a structure, whether it's a knife, whether it's whatever. Going through that these mental exercises
yeah.
and as well as kind of like almost like a oh, what's the word? I'm totally blanking on the word, but it's like a ceremonial kind of approach almost in a way,
Yeah.
where it's
I
like
find
part you going through these things.
it's almost like you're dating the piece that you're making. You get
You're
going.
flirting with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're not fully committed. You're like, about this angle, this thing, that. And like, oh, if I rotate it this way, what does it look like if it's turned 3/4 view? And
Right.
you know, how does that tip shape really work? And you might draw it with you know, something that swoops up or you know, drop points down. Who knows? And then you can like you can get a better mental feel for what it's going to be when it finishes and does it hold the qualities that you want, and if it
Right.
does you might be more inclined to make it. I still haven't I have not forged this yet, and
What
I
the
want to
fuck
make
are you
this as
doing with
well
your
eventually.
life? No, I'm just
I
joking.
know. I want to make this. I saw Josh Prince's rail spike thing. I had drawn
Mm,
this before this, but he's been using the high carbon ones, and I just love his work. It's so cool.
Josh's
Uh,
work is awesome.
it's just a brilliant mind, and a wonderful human being.
Absolutely.
But I'd really like to forge this from a spike one day when I get,
Oh, I see that now. Yeah.
yeah,
With a
yeah, but
welded on blade, like a forge welded blade. Oh, there it is. Forge welded
mhm,
Damascus blade.
mhm,
If I take a
yeah,
second to read, then I'll figure. I love that it looks like a finger bone.
yes, yeah,
It's so
yeah.
good.
And I don't want to just leave the pommel as a rail spike head. I mean, I want to leave it identifiable, but I'd like to get do a combination of, you know, heat it up, forge the dimension in as much as possible, and I might do some filing and some
Yeah,
removal as well. But I'd really, to me, this one is just a fun piece. I really like pieces that have story and weird, um, I don't know, weird energy, weird
sure.
optics, weird something that maybe almost nothing I make really belongs in the time that we live in.
I think that's great. I think it's what's great about it is that you're trying to connect people to a time that is kind of mystery or more like legends and myths and stuff like that that they're like vaguely aware of if in
Yeah.
their own heritage or background or have seen in movies, and then it's just like you're bringing it into the
Yeah.
modern time.
With that's what I'm doing with the Dragon Forge experience is it's this last year I've spent so much time when I travel in my truck, I just record the audio of stories.
Mm,
So I'm writing each dragon that I make, it's a backstory and they're related and they work together on this time period. And I have this started like the creation for the world and this kind of saga. And it is essentially the world that the Dragon Forge experience lives in is there was this time period of the Dragon Wars, and the dragons were essentially created as a parallel friend and helper of mankind, but man eventually gets greedy and kind of overuses the dragons, and eventually it kind of imprisons and enslaves them. And the dragons, has, some of them are fighting back, and they poison the dragons and make them kind of evil and attack each other because they're very powerful creatures.
yeah.
Uh, and then there's like
Oh, shit.
other little creature beings and stuff that were turning into presses, and so
Right.
everything kind of fits. And they have these names, and people come and forge with the dragon, and then they love like, okay, so this dragon is, I was working on this today, or completely rebuilding it. So I took the head off of this dragon,
Okay.
which was in North Carolina, and now it's in Arizona, the head, and I just re-sculpted it and did some new welding, put it on a different dragon body, and um, pretty excited to like finish that one up this week. But
So fun.
yeah, so, and you get to know them. Like each of them has their own personality. The forges all kind of work a little bit differently too. Our smiths fall in love with their dragons. Like not, I was gonna say not in a weird sexual way, but there's a couple guys that,
There's a couple
yeah,
guys. You hear some squeaking for late at
still fun.
night. It's not
Yeah,
just beer cans.
hmm yeah. But they do kind of they do really come to life. And one day I do want to get you out, like especially Texas, because Texas we can be open it in the dark. And as the sun goes down,
Mm.
I also have ambient lighting above
Oh,
all of the
cool.
dragons, so it really kind of pops their colors, and it feels very magical. And they look real. I mean, we get people all the time that walk by them and they do a double take of like, oh my
Right.
God, that's a real
I
dragon.
believe it.
And we're like, it is a real dragon. And we talk that we speak their names and we talk to them, and we like tell people of the backstories of our dragons. And
Mm.
some people will come back and they only want to forge with that dragon because they like that fun. And other
Yeah,
ones that they're like, I like that smith, and they don't care which dragon it is, but they want to work with that blacksmith.
I
And
got you.
then other people, they want to see what it's like on every different dragon. So
Sure.
now we are getting people that go from location to location. So we have people that will go to Texas and then they'll fly to North Carolina same season. And I was like, this last season
Oh
I
no
was in
shit.
Texas foraging with people. Yeah, and had to go back to North Carolina to cover a spot there. I'm in North Carolina, and this I don't remember her name, but her Instagram is Skylegs, and I'm looking up and I'm like, is that Skylegs from Texas? And she's like, yeah, I just foraged with you last weekend, and they ended up
That's
foraging
so
with me at
funny.
3 o'clock. Because her apparently her friend lived in Charlotte and she lives in Houston, so
Oh
um,
wow.
yeah, we're starting to see a lot more of that cross pollination, and people are coming.
That's really cool that it's like a thing that people are traveling to try to get around to see the different
Yeah.
builds.
So in Texas, we sold out of sword spots
Oh,
almost
nice. Good job.
before the festival opened.
Oh
And
shit.
yeah, it was really nuts. By the end of weekend one, the only spots we still had available were the ones we had for auction with Jay Nielsen, which I'll tell you about that later. That was really cool.
Sure.
And so people started going, well, hey, can you open up the bookings for Arizona so that we can just book out there? And we're like, no, we can't open those out yet until because of our website, and we can't have too many locations open at a time, or the system doesn't know how to manage the time zones.
Uh yeah, sure.
So it ends up messing everything up. So we don't release Arizona schedule until after Texas ends. So what they did, they were like, "Oh, well, I see appointments open in North Carolina," and they took a flight out to North Carolina and forged them. But like, "Oh, and we're from Texas," but there were no more swords available, so we flew to North Carolina
Wow.
because those fairs run at the same time.
Right. That's wild. So and they really must have really wanted to make a sword.
People want to make swords.
People want to make swords.
Yeah,
That's so great.
yeah. That was
Also,
fun. That's a fun process. We made these swords. David De La Gardelle, right? Steel World.
yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
So he's been working with us for a year and a half now, something like
Yeah,
that. And which is great because I've known him for, I don't know, 14 years,
sure.
something like that. And and uh he's we we like work really well together, but we
I
also
bet.
argue, old married people.
Oh, dude.
Uh yeah, we don't agree on things. So it's always like a lot of fun. But yeah, we worked on this sword handle together and the design of this thing, and we did a lot of illustration work. But I love the real technical sciencey part of things and the numbers and the math of
Sure.
sword and knife design, and he does not like numbers at all.
Oh, cool.
uh, he's not a math person. So what I end up doing is I use a 3D app, and I lay out the CAD file and I create the base geometry for the piece. He takes that, he brings it into a sculpting app, Nomad, and then he'll sculpt that. And we both do versions.
Right.
Yeah, I tend to like his sculpts better than mine, so usually a lot of his illustrations I choose over mine.
Sure, sure.
And then I'll take the sculpting back in, and then I'll use the alignment in a CAD program to be able to put the pinholes and the divots and everything in that we need for the mechanical purposes of it, and then
I got you. Yeah, yeah.
production. So it's really cool. I love that marriage of science and art, and when the two different things come together and they work really well to create these beautiful things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So good.
really
Oh,
cool
here
to
we go.
get to make those.
I just found a good post about the handles. I can get that. It's a video.
Oh yeah, these were ones that I had to I
They're
get
like all
cat. My
cast.
kids are Catholic. Yeah, yeah. My 11-year-old was helping me clean up the castings.
Wild.
Yeah, we
And you
do
guys were casting in those yourself, or you is that something you
I
contract?
did some myself, some emergency ones because we didn't get our shipment in, and then some of them are 3D printed
Okay.
aluminum, and then some of them are cast.
Yeah.
as well. So we had some bronze castings done in Texas, and then we have some pot metal ones that we had done in um, Pakistan. And those ones are like look, American manufacturing is really difficult, and we've tried to
Yeah.
stay 100% American manufacturing, and we didn't make it this year because our cheapest quote for the castings was $248 a piece, not a set,
Whoa.
in America. And
A
we wrote,
piece?
yeah, we wrote like 30, 35 different um, foundries, and that was the cheapest we could get in the US. Now we had a guy in Texas, he's like, he does grinding for us, and he's like, I know this place, wouldn't give us any, would not tell us what it was or who it was. And we got one order, we got like 20 sets, and none of them lined up. The pinholes didn't line up
Oh
exactly.
fuck.
Um, they were affordable, but like we had to re-drill everything,
Oh
so it did,
no.
it was rough, and they looked really good though, like bronze, like actual using real bronze just kicks pot metal's ass all over the place. So
Sure.
if anyone listening is like, hey, I know a foundry that'll actually give you an affordable rate, I'd be willing to pay not $248 a scale, but I'd be willing to pay more than I pay the Pakistan one. So, uh,
Yeah. Are you familiar with Matt Berry?
yes, yes.
He might be somebody worth getting a hold of.
He probably is. I probably should. I kind of just think of him as doing like, I don't know, small, small
Well,
batch stuff,
yeah,
but
well, he has the ability to do repeatable
yeah.
stuff.
Because we order it like, I don't know, I think our last order was like 250 sets.
Oh shit, that's a big
Yeah.
order.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. In Texas,
Yeah.
we planned for 4 swords a day, Saturday and Sunday for 8 weeks, which
Yeah.
is uh, s- fuck, my math brain is gone right now. And it was like
It's a lot.
70 some. We ended up having, and then we had the J Nielsen ones too. So it was like
Yeah.
70 some sets that we needed for there. And then the guys got really excited, and the people were like, we want more. And we ended up having to order more. And there were some days we did 10 swords.
Oh my god.
We had a
That's
guy
a
who
lot.
was putting out like 15, 16 Warhammers in a day with
He was
customers.
he was what?
Making Warhammers. We did Warhammers too. We've been
Yeah.
using A33 from Coal Iron. They've
Oh
got
yeah.
that Ludagon. Yeah, it's great stuff. Uh, it's water quench, no temper required, ready to go. So we and this is a big part of my job is actually figuring out all of the mistakes that people are going to make,
Sure.
reducing the amount of mistake that they can make, and still being able to get the piece done in X amount of time. And that might be 45 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be 3 hours, depending on what it is that we're trying to do with them.
Right.
And I got to get everything ordered and lined up and fit and make sure and test it all. And then we launch it. So one of the things I'm working on now, we're trying to open a new location up with a totally new theme. I
Okay.
can't say the location yet because we don't have the contract signed.
Sure.
Uh, but it's really cool, and you can kind of guess the theme. Is I've been working on a cutlass, and so
Mm,
the many things that I have to keep in mind is that um, they won't be machined. People are going to forge them, and they're all going to be a little bit different.
right.
So, it's like you start putting a curve in your cutlass, and now like your scabbard and all the fittings become a lot more complicated. So I
Yeah.
had to, take out some of the curve, or I have to figure out the tolerance of what it can in the back and what it can do in the front, and then design a scabbard that is easily reproducible, one size fits all that we do. And our grinders then have to, like, they know the max amount of internal capability of the scabbard, so when they get it back, they grind it down into that shape. And
Yeah.
so then with the tang fittings, I found a really cool handle from a medieval Fight Club like supplier place that has this high dura rubber handle.
What?
Yeah,
Medieval Fight Club?
yeah, yeah. So it's out of Australia, and they sell
Okay.
this high dura rubber handle, and
Okay.
you can slip it on a tang. It's 13 millimeters wide at the top, and it's 11 millimeters wide at the bottom, and it's four and
Okay.
a half inches. It's like perfect. So what I did is I just designed a tang for it, and I didn't like how thin the tang was to the width of the blade. So then I put a spacer in, and of course then I had to, like, we're getting those cut at send out of copper or bronze or mild steel, whatever those spacers are.
Sure.
But that allowed me to get some thickness and a step into the tang so that it's not like so right down to a rat tail. But all of that I tested to see how bad is this going to get? Like, how breakable is this?
Yeah.
And how fast can we make this in? And so that's a lot of fun. You know, playing with the CAD software, figuring out those numbers, putting them all together, and going, okay, when we get this from Send, how close can I get my design files, and how tight are their tolerances so that when it comes here, we can do as minimal prep work to these pieces and still have
Sure.
them slip together.
Right.
And I made this. I don't know if I have a picture on Instagram of it yet, but with the handle, I 3D modeled the handle, and I took this sort of I-beam style approach, and I wrapped it from the front down to the back, the top of the tang down to the back of the tang,
Yeah.
and create like a little hinge pivot. Because when we create the D guard, I want that to line up every time, so
Sure.
that you can lock your tang base or your sword base at the base of the tang. You put your little spacer on, your guard spacer, and then you slip this 3D printed stainless steel, 3D printed stainless steel handle thing. After you put this, you put like a hot flat guard in there. Well, I guess it would be this way. You put a hot flat guard in there, and then you use the thing and you bend it up around that I-beam back to the top, and it's gonna auto pull it right in alignment with that hole,
Right.
or where you're gonna have your peen block. So then you can pop your peen block on, quench it, pull the whole thing out, take the stainless steel spacer out, put it back on with the rubber vulcanized rubber handle, peen
Yeah.
block, tap it down, done. No weird jiggles, misalignments, because that rubber is hugging that tang for
Yep.
dear life. I make the tang, I put the tang just a little bit bigger, so it's putting a little more pressure on the rubber, and
Okay. Yeah.
the thing fucking works. But it took me 3.5 months to sort out all of the problems for that.
Ooh.
So
Sweet Jesus. Well, we jumped right into it, like where you're at right now. We're 52 minutes in. I want to take a second, excuse me, to jump back to little baby Josh, little golden halo wings sitting in the manger. Um yeah, young forging Jesus, Josh. And I want to know what it was like for you. What were you like growing up? And maybe a couple, like, I don't know, keystone moments in your adolescence, that like
sure.
like some places where you like, especially when you first started realizing like you had this artistic like bent, and you were always doing that kind of stuff, and how did that lead to like graphic design and then eventually swords and stuff?
Um, well, I don't recall a time that I didn't know that I was an artist. Like, I don't have a
Okay.
discovery time. I just always was either building with like I very much remember this like old blocks. I was born in '81, so like I said,
Oh
like
god, you're
still from the
oh,
'70s. So I had like gum these things. They were like these big sort of Legos with two knobs, and they sort of were like that plastic that had sort of like white strands in it. You know what I'm talking about? It was kind of soft, really fun to chew. Anyhow, I remember those, and I loved them. And I would make these things, and of course, I was always drawing crayons, markers, whatever I could draw. I just did it. I drew. I like drawing,
yeah.
and and it kind of came to me, or I just was obsessed with it. But I also didn't have a real great young childhood.
Okay.
Um, my dad was both my parents were creative. My dad was a carpenter and an auto body mechanic and a collector for a drug ring. So it made
Oh,
for, and my mom was more of a traditional artist who ended up getting knocked up and just kept having kids. So
okay.
um, they 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 fought a lot, and um, he just wasn't a stable life. And at some point, I think as I got older, what I learned is that he had tried to get out of the drug ring and was going to turn people over, but there were so many cops on the payroll and judges that he ended up being killed. Uh,
Oh, holy shit.
yeah, it was framed as a murder suicide, like a random hitchhiker who just also happened to needed to be killed by the same group of people. Um, Anyhow, he was found hanging out of the side of the passenger side of his car, and the hitchhiker was somehow driving his car, which doesn't make any sense. This is why it was like everything was like so weird and swept under the rug so fast, and it
Right.
was it nothing ever set well with any of our family, and it was a pretty rough time period,
I
and
can imagine.
uh, which I stayed away from drugs for a long time. It's like it had some good effects on me.
Sure.
Uh, Ultimately, it's sort of like mistakes. You make a mistake, you should take the opportunity to learn from mistake, including
Right.
somebody else's.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's kind of the approach I took with it. But the other thing, and I thought about this recently because somebody asked me a little bit about this like a year ago, and I was thinking about it. And I really do think that being lost in the art world probably kept me really centered. You know, when you like hyper focus on
Mm.
drawing,
Yeah.
and I actually think about this today because I was sculpting a dragon. The sun's going down. I'm running out of time. That like there's stress everywhere, but I was like I'm just so happy, and I
Right.
feel fine because all I'm worrying about right now is these details that I'm putting into this piece to make this good, and I'm getting this right, and if that's right, like everything else is all right.
Right.
This Yeah, so I think that really helped therapeutically for me getting through a lot of those years.
Oh, and I
Uh,
can imagine. I mean, I definitely didn't go through anything like that, um, but the immersion, your immersion in your artwork, whatever it was, whatever discipline it was, or whatever medium it was, um, and your hyper focus into it. And I don't know if you recall being aware of like any kind of flow states, but a flow state I can imagine would occur very easily for somebody that's just like has that kind of trauma and is like redirecting their energy and their focus into this creative outlet that is kind of a meditative place to be, where
yeah,
you're just so present with what's happening literally right in front of you, and every line and the pressure of everything of how like how much pressure you're using with a pencil or a pen or a brush or whatever you're using, um, to help you with managing some of those probably just like really heavy feelings that were fucking
yeah,
happening at that time. That's so
yeah.
crazy. What part of the country was this in?
Pennsylvania I was
Okay.
born in Erie, Pennsylvania. Great Lakes kid. Grew up surfing the lakes. Okay.
Yeah. Wild. That's fucking wild. Okay, so
Knives, though,
yeah, go
uh,
ahead.
so shortly before he died, my dad was a pretty cool dude, though, by the way. And he was a good dad. Like he'd never, um, he was not a bad dad, and he wasn't not around. Like I have a decent amount of memories
Yeah.
of him, even though I was just short of 7 when that happened.
Mhm.
At 5, we were walking downtown Erie with my mom, and I had found a little Swiss Army knife, and I begged her to let me keep it. She goes, "Oh, if your dad teaches you how to use it, you can keep it." I
Sure.
still have that knife to this day.
Oh
I
wow.
tip at some point when I was like 12 or 13, but I have that knife, and he taught me how to carve with it. And for the next couple years, when I was in his car, I was whittling sticks,
Oh.
carving, 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 carving. By the time I was 12, I was carving chess sets.
Oh, fun. Wow.
So for me, it was like it was so cool. Like I was drawing, I was carving. I loved like carving faces and things and
Sure.
horses. I really liked carving horses back then and little animal figurines.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was it was really um, cool. And it's cool to me. I think also when I use these skills, I know part of it is probably subconsciously me keeping a part, a segment, a piece of him alive by
Yeah.
continuing on something that he taught me when I
Yeah.
was, and I
Yeah.
think that's part of my obsession with knives. And so fast forward, when I was 14, I started working at a horse ranch in the summer times and as maintenance. And the group of guys and I would raid the scrap piles and the farrier's equipment, and we would make
Sure.
Bowie knives and throw them and stuff, you know. So we just dicked around. It was just fun. Like I didn't know of any, you know, the internet wasn't really. It was kind of a thing,
Sure.
but it was still so new. My life didn't revolve around technology. I mean, I worked at a horse ranch. We weren't even I didn't have a phone. We weren't even allowed to have a radio at this place. It was
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was a religious horse ranch too. So it was like, you
You
know,
gotta keep the demons out.
yeah, you were in the middle of nowhere. So you did things,
Yeah.
you know. That's where I learned to do a lot of the things that I can do today happened
Mm.
from 5 years working at that place in the summer times.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. So, and then it just kind of like graduated high school. I went off to art school. My senior year of high school, I got to go to a VOTech program. I went to a private Christian school,
Okay.
and they didn't have a whole lot of opportunities. But the one that I switched schools between ninth and 10th grade, and this new school that I went to, they were it was a different school district and they had a tech program. And so I was able to get into that my senior year. And that really did change my life because what I saw, instead of wanting to be a Disney animator or just an illustrator or a fine artist, I really like to oil paint. That is
Mm.
something I love. It's maybe my favorite thing to do.
Oh, I
I
didn't
don't,
know that.
yeah, it's been years, but yeah, I really love oil painting. And I used to do a lot of it back then. And
Yeah.
then I went to this program and I learned about commercial art and design and that you could actually make money and you didn't have to be a starving artist. You could be an
Right.
artist that actually pays their bills and does quite well. I'm like, that's what I want to be. So I did end up going to an art institute in Fort Lauderdale, and
Okay.
I had a group of really great professors, and I loved every minute of that. And I graduated art school with a 4.0,
Holy shit.
and yeah, it
Good
was
for
like
you.
I hyper focused on college, and I
Yeah.
was like, I loved it. In the subjects struggled with in high school, I didn't struggle with in college. I think it was just what I wanted and what I needed at the time, and I
Yeah, yeah.
saw a way to not. I spent a lot of my time judging, is this a decision my dad would make or a decision that I should
Mm.
make? And so for me, I wanted to be a dad and I wanted to be around for my kids and I wanted to be a part of their lives and I wanted to not make the mistakes that he made. But I also wanted to replicate the good things that I saw in him.
Sure.
I wanted to be a playful dad that was a good time, that did things with his kids and took them on adventures and taught them how to do things in life that other people wouldn't. But then I also didn't want to, you know, put myself in uh, or my family in sort of life danger or
Right.
get down a bad crowd. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's it's an interesting thing because you are. you are still born a certain way. You know, like I have a tendency to chaos. I like
Oh yeah.
wild chaos. It's like I enjoy it. And what I've had to find though is it's a lot safer to be in artistic chaos
Okay,
than it
yeah.
is to be in life chaos.
Right,
So
sure.
so that's where I think I get my wild fixes that I put myself up against deadlines that I can't fulfill or the workload is um, you know, too big and the project's too massive. Or every time I build a dragon, I go, we're gonna go crazier, and instead of doing one, we're gonna do three, and um, you know, we're gonna make it robotic and we're gonna make it move, and
Oh my
yeah.
god.
So and that keeps it fresh and it keeps it I don't know, it keeps it addicting. I'll be honest, like I'm a little bit addicted to this
The
Dragon Forge
craziness.
experience thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so good. I yeah, like I was saying earlier, the first time I saw one of the Dragon Forges, I think I think maybe I had seen one, not from you, I can't remember where, one before, and it was kinda cheesy, and I saw yours. I was like, "Hol" and the early ones were still kind like, especially compared to what you're doing now, were, like, rough, but they were
yeah.
fucking rad, and I was like, "Yes!
Yeah.
Somebody's doing it right!" I was so psyched, and it's been so amazing to watch the slow changes and iterations and evolutions of how you construct them and how detailed they are, and how you're now, like you said, you're adding robotics elements to them so that they move too. It's fucking cool. I love it so much.
People don't realize the amount of physics and geometry balance that has to go into making those because you know, for a long time I wasn't in any permanent structures, so I'd have to pack
Sure.
them up at the end of a
Oh my
showing and
god.
put them in my truck. So I had to build them like I didn't build them like Legos piece by piece so much. Do you remember the toy constructs? They were
Uh,
they were like
no, I don't.
they were like element chunks,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like you could like snap on an arm,
Okay.
an elbow, and they had bendable ornaments, things. I don't know. It was an '80s toy that I vaguely remember playing with, and it might not even be the name, but that's what I remember. Constructs, and that's what I based dragon building on, and it and that's the approach that I took was like, okay, so um, no single piece that I make can be so big that one person can't put it on and take it off the dragon and pack it into a truck.
Sure.
So because I end up packing these up, driving them to a festival, unloading them, setting them up, and oftentimes by myself. Now these days I have more people working for me, which is nice and that's super helpful. But for a long time, that's what it had to be.
Right.
And so I kind of had to take that mentality, and what I had to figure out was a balance of the internal skeletal structure had to be able to support me. Yes, that's them. Is it called construct? It's called construct. Yeah,
Good memory.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
they
so they
had,
break down. Yeah.
hmm yeah, and they had motor. Like you could drive the cars around and build robots.
Yeah.
It's really quite a very cool toy. I don't know. I didn't have them. I had a friend that had them, so that's what I would play with when I went over there.
No, that's great. I've never heard of these.
Yeah.
Before my time, even though you're only born like 3 years before me. It's like, I've never seen those before in my entire life. They're
Huh.
probably carryover actually from the '70s.
They could be. Yeah. Yeah. Probably somebody's old toy collection. Yeah. But yeah, it was really it's been a really fun road to figure that all out because just you have safety considerations too. Could be so you got this like head that you want sticking out and you want it to look real. So if
Right.
my arm is the thing, and so it's got a bunch of weight right here. So this head can weigh anywhere from 50 to 85 pounds, the forge head.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
if it's right here, it's supported a little bit better, but that doesn't really look like super great. You know, you get your head a little bit further out and it's reaching out. Maybe that's a little bit better, but now it's going to tilt over. So you've got to have counterweights and you have to figure out exactly what that balance is going to be. And I had to set a standard of if I couldn't hang off the neck my full body weight, then it wasn't going to be safe enough to put a fire pit on. Yeah, Trogdor. Trogdor is great. You
Yeah, I
see the
mean, but I'm
Stalin.
seeing what you're saying, like, the forge, the head is suspended way
Mhm,
out in front of the body.
yeah. So that's
So,
a whole truss, uh, triangular neck truss that goes down into a body cage, and
yeah,
then all of the pieces slip lock and then bolt in from the inside.
that's
Even the
amazing.
horns come off that one.
Yeah.
The welding on that one, if you zoom in on that, the eye of that one, it's been clawed, it's been scratched.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
It's
Oh, and so
red
that's built up weld?
scar. It's built up weld. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
And I met a guy who's a glass blower on the circuit, and so like Chris Henley made these eyes, and that's a
Sure.
glass eye. So not only is it a glass eye because he blows glass, but the other side of this dragon is actually a really beautiful eye. It's this beautiful purple eye. It's full vibrancy, but this one has he took it and then he put a little bit of white over it because it's been
Yeah.
clawed. So it's a blind eye. It's
Right.
supposed to look like that. And then so the backstory is that he's been poisoned by a dragon, and while he lost his physical visibility, it
Yeah.
actually has given him the power to see true intentions. So he can sense
Oh.
evil. He does not like evil because he's been attacked by poison dragons. They took his wife and his kids, and so he
Oh
goes
my gosh.
crazy in the presence of evil. And so we in his dragon stall, there's claw marks. I took angle grinders to the wood and I made claw marks, and I have like metal teeth chunks and claws embedded into the wood all over there.
Yeah.
And then that's the presence of him going crazy. And to get him to settle down, we have to feed him a pickle. He likes pickles, and you know, Ren Fairs make pickles everywhere. So uh, the different dragons, we get people to bring them gifts, and people will bring us pickles. They bring us bottles of mead. They bring us flowers.
Oh, I
Some
bet.
so we get all sorts of like bone trinkets. By the end of a festival, especially in Texas, each little dragon has its own little shrine of gifts that have been given to it.
Ah, that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
I love that. So you can see the other Oh, wait, this is a different dragon, I just realized.
That's a different dragon. Yeah, that is
Oh, jeez.
Fafnir in North Carolina. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a version. That's like a I don't know. That's a 2-year-old version now.
Yeah.
Maybe going on 3. That one
Fafnir.
that one will still be that one will still be in rotation this fall.
Fafnir has some traditional roots in, like,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
Scandinavian countries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and we play off of that a little bit too because Fafnir was trapped into the form of a let's see, he's a dwarf that was trapped in the form
Oh,
of a
that's right.
dragon, vice versa, something like that.
No, yeah, he was a dwarf. He
Yeah,
started as
and
a dwarf.
we
Yeah.
utilize that in Texas. We have Fafnir the dwarf. That's our first press. That was a metal munching man machine.
Yeah.
Uh, that's Fafnir, and then the dragon that Jay Nielsen was forging on doing swords, that's Fafnir the dragon. So in our tale, there's a guy, his name is Nerian, and he's the head smith, and he's like all of our smiths kind of represent Nerian, who's this sort of central character in all of the dragons' lives across the story, the series story arc.
Yeah.
And Nerian works with Fafnir the dwarf, so the dwarves are very good at building and making things and finding elements and forging and things like that. And so he works with Fafnir, but Fafnir has to go undercover into the evil mages wherever where he's poisoning dragons and he's turning them into these mechanical creatures that are essentially just being tortured to um, uh, uh, continue to keep humans and dragons enslaved. So Nerian dragons have magical elements. They can't use magic, but they have magical elements, and
Sure.
humans aren't magic, but they can use magical elements in alchemy to do cool things. So he gets some rare harvested metal from one of the dwarfs, and he uses some dragon elements, and he forges out a magic rune. And on one side of the rune is the symbol for dragon, and the other side is the symbol for dwarf. And he's able to switch the
Mm.
rune pendant back and forth to go from human to dwarf. So he gets captured as a dragon because this guy wants dragons, and he goes in, but then he's able to get information and sneak out as a dwarf and go around. And it gives him a lot of free reign, and the mechanics help in the story quite a bit. So that's how
Yeah.
that, and we use the familiarity of the Fafnir name and idea to, um, I don't know, to like help pull the
Dude,
story.
you guys got to do a podcast. I
Yeah,
think I think the people that have have been part of these experience would love to, because I'm sure they don't get all the stories of all the
mm,
backgrounds of all the dragons. And because you have so many different dragons, I mean, you could either do one episode on a dragon, or you could do 4 or 5 episodes telling the story of a dragon. And just like, yeah, just talk about them, and also with the different smiths that work with those various dragons and their experience with using the dragons and stories they have. I would love to hear that, and you could
yeah,
just call it the Dragon Forge experience.
yeah. I mean, you're probably not wrong. I mean, it's. I hadn't thought about doing it in a podcast. You know what? I probably have almost 50 hours of recordings of me just telling the stories.
Oh, dude, I love it.
They're terrible. You don't want to listen to them, but
I think there's an AI app where you can transcribe a lot of that into
yeah,
writing, but then there's another, like, then you have to
yeah.
read through all of it and edit
We've
it,
been
and
using some of that to help because we've been writing, so we have some blog posts up, and they're very watered down versions.
mm,
Occasionally, so sometimes I get to just walk around when I'm on site if all the positions are filled, and I just tell people the stories. I just like, can I introduce
ah,
you to the dragons? And I
you're the
just walk
bard.
around. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I just tell people about what we have going on, and people will listen. They like it. They're like, "This is great. Do
Well,
you
especially if
you
people are
you
just
would
like
try
hanging
that?"
out in line. Yeah, that's perfect for them.
And oh, and Texas is massive. That Ren Fair is so huge, and we get so many people, and we have the six dragons, and it fills up. So you need roaming entertainment,
Yeah.
and that definitely does help. So yeah, it's cool. Really have enjoyed creating that world and building it and seeing it blossom and grow. And I know what we have coming down the pipe in the future, and I'm also really excited about that. Not just the new locations, but um,
Yeah.
working with a kid who's waiting to get into hopefully MIT this fall. He graduated high school early, and he's
Oh, wow.
been in robotics for 4 years. So he is kind of helping me pick out parts and do things. And right now, what we're working on is a system for making the dragons belch fire. So right now, we put our hands on um,
The
the
burner.
burner. Yeah,
Yep.
which is gets hot. It does get hot. I mean, you can touch
Yeah.
most burners.
Yeah, especially the Venturi burners, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you can choke the air out, and so it just keeps filling with gas, and it'll get really bright, but it won't be very hot. And then you'll take your hand off, and that oxygen shoots back in. And because I closed the back of the forges off, it blasts out the front of the dragon. It goes. And,
Yeah.
oh, you actually had a little video up earlier of Justin Hammond doing that, and he was actually sprinkling in some grinder dust. We take the grinder dust
Oh, yeah. See if I can find that one
powder
again.
from the grind shed, and
Oh,
they'll
yeah.
stick the burner as well, and it sparks all over, and it's real magical. But we
Yeah.
keep getting burned, and other than that,
You
we
don't
have to.
like that?
You know, we're gonna get burned. It happens, but do you have to get burned that much? Yeah. So he's doing one of the things to it where he's sprinkling the stuff in, and then it puts his hand on it, and it belches fire. And
So you basically are turning them into little flamethrowers.
yeah, exactly. Hmm.
I love it. Just a little
People,
poof, just
yeah. People love to take videos and photos of that, though. It looks really cool. We
For
have
sure.
authors that come take pictures of their books in our location, and we get influencers that come through. You know, the TikToker influencer people that like to come through and take the pictures with the dragons. And
Yeah.
I've done a handful of my own photo shoots of people. I'm like, give me the camera. I'll do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, dude, it's so good. And I love that it like just thinking about how these short interactions are gonna stick with these people forever.
Yeah,
Like, that's something that I don't think we think enough about is how we interact with people and how we can try to make even I mean, that's a big moment, but even small moments last.
yeah,
And like, I still remember when I was 7 years old and we were driving to somewhere. I was bored as hell, and I was looking out the window, and I saw another kid, the next car over, and I just went at her, and she was shocked, and then she did it back, and then we both just started laughing, and then just boom, separated, and but for whatever reason, like that person has become a part of my life
yeah,
forever. For that very short moment. And so it's like, but I think it's really cool that you're creating these moments
yeah,
that feel very uh yeah, like mythological and kind of fantastical,
mhm,
and these are things that these people are going to remember forever for the rest of their lives, and stories that they can tell and share with friends and pictures they can show. And it's just such a really unique role to play in so many strangers' lives.
yeah. The
Especially with, like, the like, an actor could be part of a movie or a show, and millions of people watch it, right?
yeah,
But they only know that person from the show, where you're, like, physically interacting with these people face
yeah,
to face, hammer and steel and fire and all that kinda stuff for 45 minutes to 3 hours, depending on what the project is, and I think that's a really unique thing, and I think it's really cool that you've taken that on. I'm actually really curious, like, where like all of this even started from. Like, how did this concept even come together? Because I'm
uh,
sure that I've been to some like medieval festivals and stuff like that, and there's somebody forging. There's like a blacksmith somewhere.
demo guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but this whole like having the stables of dragons and
yeah.
like you you've done such a great job. Like you got it on lock, and it's like and it's actually it's a thing, like, building these dragons is so ridiculously unreasonable that it's the fear of somebody stealing the idea and
Don't
replicating it
worry,
anywhere
I don't
else.
worry about it. I
The
post about
exactly.
how I build them. You wanna know? It's on my Instagram. You
For
can go
sure.
ahead and build them. Good
It's
luck.
I can't even I see them and I'm like, "Holy fuck, what a nightmare." That's but at the same time, I'm like, "It's fucking amazing."
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's
It's it's a
yeah,
weird
tell me
it's a
about it.
weird story to fruition. Um, it's got its weird ups and downs, and it
Sure,
definitely when you get into forging anything, for me, it was swords and knives. That's what I like to make.
yeah,
It was magical, it was awesome, and it quickly became all I wanted to do. And how many people have you heard that from? Many,
for sure.
that get into
Yeah,
the craft.
yep,
So many of us speak about it like that. It's like it awakens something that hasn't existed in maybe our humanity or our own personal human line in um, you know hundreds of years. And
well, and
it
I think I feel like you approach it or you come to it from a unique place where you were like a professional.
hmm
You came from a professional
yeah,
background, you doing art professionally, had like I don't know if it was a corporate job or if you refer to it
it
like that or
was,
anything like that.
worked at
And then
agency.
came yeah, and then you came to the craft, the knife making craft and went full time from that.
Yeah.
I came from washing dishes and prepping in a bakery. Like, for me, the choice was fucking easy. It's like, "Oh, do I wanna keep washing dishes and prepping in a bakery, or do I wanna make twice as much money making a knife every once in a while?" Now my life circumstances have definitely changed since then, and so it takes more. But um, yeah, I was definitely in a very different place when I decided to go full time, and
Yeah,
so I can also imagine that
that's
that was
when
a very tricky thing for you and your family to kind of like
it
make that decision.
it was very tricky because I really like forging and I really like my day job. That's what I went to school for. That was, I worked in as my way up from designer to creative director at global agencies from 2003 to uh, uh, I think the last agency I worked at was actually in 2019
Oh wow.
when I had a blip in 2015. An agency I worked for, which I won't say the name of, mishandled two different very big accounts.
Mm,
RJ Reynolds Tobacco, which was like worth, I don't know, $28 million for us a year,
holy
and
shit.
Lance Crackers, which was, I think, a $14 million a year contract. They
Okay.
lost them both within 2 weeks. So they ended up letting go over half of the staff at that agency over the following 2 weeks. And
Right.
so I was one of the people because I was no longer working in the office. I was working from home because I was in a custody battle and I was
Mm,
not raise my children.
yeah.
So um, they were like, if you can move back down, you can keep your job. And I'm like, no, I'll find something else. And I did. I went and did contract work, and what I used at that time period, what I did is I picked up work for 20 hours a week instead of 40 plus agency. Oftentimes I was working 80 hours
Right.
a week now. So I would, and what I did is I just put uh, a high billing rate on it. And so in 20 hours, I was making as much money as I was doing in 40 previously. And
Sure.
that left me 20 hours that I could get better at my craft that I wanted
Yeah.
to do with my hands. And that kind of worked. It worked really well so long as I had a design contract to hold me down. Because at that time, smithing really didn't make me that much money. I took my time. Um, I actually, when I was first kind of getting into sort of when you were talking about those axes that I used to make, I didn't even have a grinder back then.
Sure.
Like I was forging them out and I was bastard filing shit and working everything down with sandpaper.
Oh my god.
It but for me, I wasn't really I wasn't doing it to make money. I was
Right.
doing it because I liked metalworking and I wanted to take this time. I was in a very difficult custody battle, and it was really, once again, I could get lost in the details of the project
Mm.
and
Yep.
not be stuck stressing about what I needed to write to say to the judge or how I had to respond to
Sure.
this email or this new development or whatever. So it really helped to keep me balanced, and that was really the main goal. And if I could make as much money in 20 hours as I used to in 40, then nobody cared that 20 hours I was screwing around in my garage.
Right.
But then the contract started drying up more.
Okay.
Uh, Now I had been on TV. I went on Forged in Fire at some
Right.
point, which I think I filmed 2 episodes behind you. You were like the first one filmed in season 2, right? Like you filmed around Halloween.
Um, I was in season 1 and season 4.
But you were were you the last episode of season 1?
I was close to the last one. Yeah, I was, episode 7, although I think they got the episodes kinda out of
Yeah,
order.
they air them in different orders than they film them. But I think we
Yeah.
ended up I think we because I was the second episode in season 2 that filmed, but I didn't air. I aired as the 6th
Yeah.
or 5th or something. I don't know. But anyhow, so that happened, and I took out. I got a credit card that I could buy a forging press with, and
Okay, yeah.
I bought a little. tabletop milling machines so I could make guards faster and like better. And I had a kind of got I got like a I got the wrong grinder. It was the right grinder for me. It was one of those like a wide woodworking grinder for that I used
Oh,
it for
yeah,
sword
yeah.
because I was making long sword stuff and I was making
Sure.
axes. And so the radius on it worked for me for swords, axes, and saxes. That was really all I cared about. I didn't care
Right.
about anything else. I didn't even want to make knives. Honestly, like I like knives. They're not I don't like them as much as swords, axes, and saxes.
Yeah.
But
Saxes are
eventually,
great.
what I decided to do, I was like, shit, I gotta get better faster. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop making these long, big projects, and I'm gonna make smaller things and do more of them, and then I'll have more experience and expand my skill set much faster. And that
Sure.
worked. And then I got hooked on knives. So there you go. But during that time period, I um I had a couple years that sucked real bad and I wasn't
Mm,
making any money and it was, and I had 4 kids and you know, I was getting opportunities, asked to go back on Forged in Fire again. In between the first time I was on Forged in Fire and then so like in between 2015 and 2019, I probably had 7 different TV shows ask that I was in the runnings for being a host, and like 3 or 4 of them were on uh what's that channel that everybody likes to watch with all the home shit?
Home and garden?
Yeah.
Discovery?
I did a couple. Yeah, I did a couple for Discovery. Uh,
TLC?
yeah, I think it's like TLC. So I don't know, something like that. One of those places where they have all the like home repair shows and shit like that. So
HGTV?
HGT. I don't know. I don't remember.
One of
Uh,
those, somewhere.
oh, I did. I had a lot of those come in, and so I was constantly doing these. Not constantly, but like, and it it it's not like you fill out paperwork once and you're done. It's
Sure.
it's like this 3 to 4 month process of doing these interviews all the time and then recording stuff and sending it back. And I would end up getting second place. And, they'd be like, "Oh, they decided to go with
Ah.
this guy." 'Cause it was like every time it was like, and I kept chasing this thing, and it was sort of like I felt a little bit like a greyhound running a race that was never going to get the rabbit.
Oh god.
And I
Yeah.
realized at some point that I wasn't going to get the rabbit, and I was like, I'm done with this shit. I've got to get on with my life and do something. Lauren and I were just like kind of struggling um, uh, in a bad way.
Sure.
As marriages can do when like somebody loses their main job and then doesn't get their shit together for a while. That's what
Sure.
happened,
Yeah.
and it created um, problems. But she was gracious enough to go, "Yeah, like, I understand, try your thing, shoot your shot." And so one thing that I had latched on to was that in South Carolina, oysters and oyster roast are a really big thing.
Okay.
So instead of going, "Oh, I'm gonna make swords or I'm gonna make chef's knives or whatever, I'm gonna force it, like, I'm gonna make a thing that I like and force it on people." So like, what's a thing that people use that's made out of metal that I could sell them because they already want it anyhow? That was the thing. And so I started making them by the hundreds. And I got good at them and I was selling them like crazy. And that
Right.
actually got me through for quite a while.
Was that
Making
Carolina Shuckers? Are you Carolina Shuckers?
No, I'm not Carolina Shuckers, but
Okay.
they were really mad at me.
Oh,
Um,
were they?
Yeah, because they were North Carolina, I was South Carolina, and they're like, "You're stealing our thing," and I'm like, "No, this is the Civil War model. There's like you can't steal something that was done 150 years ago."
Also,
Uh,
oyster shucking knives have been around for
Dude,
fucking hundreds of
oh my
years.
God, this guy like screaming at me once, and then his partner called me back, and he was like, "I'm sorry, that guy's a little unhinged." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's whatever. Like, it's fine, dude. I'm not gonna stop making oyster shuckers though." And I didn't, and I and I did pretty well making those. And but what
Good.
here's the cool thing that I realized is that people don't just want to buy them; people want to forge them. So I would go and I was demoing, right? I'd
Oh,
like
okay.
go to a bar and I'd forge, and people would tip you a few bucks. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. A few bucks is cool, but I'd rather you just buy my shit. And they're like, well, can I
Right.
swing the hammer? Okay. So I just started showing people how to forge them on site. And instead of paying me like 2 or 3 bucks or buying me a beer, they were paying me $40 to swing a hammer for a little bit. And I would just make sure they got it right.
Yeah. Did they get the shucker too?
They
Or
would keep the shucker.
yeah.
You get the shucker, you get the hammer. I didn't even care if people drank while they were hammering. Drunk people pay more. So I had started to do this, and I stopped having zero sell events, and I stopped having low dollar event sales,
Yeah.
and so I was forging at like 3 or 4 different bars around town, and then I picked up selling at Kiowa Resort in South Carolina, which is really beautiful high-end resort, and I was making these heron-shaped shuckers and alligator-shaped shuckers, and
Oh,
uh,
wow. I feel like
they were
I've never seen those.
yeah, I posted them very little because um, I had a legal agreement with them that
Yeah,
yeah, so as long as they were willing to buy it for me from me, then it wasn't that it was their product, but I could only make it for them, so I didn't
I
really
see.
post about them much.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
but I'm probably gonna bring them back because this new location that we're opening is going to be in the general southeast area. So
Okay.
shuckers will be on the menu again.
Cool.
Uh, yeah, so that worked really well, but that helped kind of create a framework. And I started doing other events, and I was going to little music festivals. And I went to this music festival, 5 day music festival in Georgia, and I sold out of all my stuff on day number one.
Oh,
And
geez.
what do you do for 4 more days? Well, a guy had come by with a bucket of rail spikes, and he's like, "I'll trade you for a lesson." So I'm like, sure, whatever. And he's like, can my buddy join us? Sure. So I just made like a circle rope around my forge, and I taught rail spike, and as I was teaching these two, more people stood and they're like, can I go next? Sure. How much? I'm like, oh, $75. So all day for the next 4 days, from literally from 9 a.m. to midnight,
Oh, holy shit.
I was forging with people. I did not have a grinder. It was like we would forge it as thin as possible, bastard file, um, Nicholson file, and then sharpening um, rod. And
Yep.
it was good enough. It worked. It would take them, it would take everybody a couple of hours to get through it, and I'd help them a
Sure.
little bit in there. But I made so much money at that festival doing it like that. And I have people that forged with me, and that was 2016 or 2017. They
Okay.
forged me and they write me every year on the date of that festival and thank me for the good time that they had,
Oh, wow.
which is nuts.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
Well,
Impact.
that you get that impact, that person to person connection, and I like people. And I find that people are the future, and something kind of just started shifting in me, and it wasn't as important for me to make as a legacy so much as it was to um, open doors for people as a legacy.
Mm,
That's kind of what I look at.
right.
The
Sure.
important thing that Dragon Forge experiences to me is that, like what you said, is that we're giving people the opportunity, and so many people are nervous or afraid or hesitant to jump into a new craft or a new thing or a new skill because they either don't want to make a mistake, they don't want to look embarrassed, they don't want to
Sure.
mess up, they don't know where to get the equipment. They don't know how to hold a hammer or a pair of tongs. So what we do is it makes it easy for anyone to jump in and begin. And
Yeah.
you're going to be successful. We're guaranteeing your success. And we're
Right.
almost guaranteeing that you're going to also get probably a burn or a blister. And and most people are okay with that. And some people pass out. It does happen. But what is really cool is that people smile and people feel good about themselves because it is really difficult to to hammer for 40 minutes or an hour, and then we grind their piece so it looks good, and they get this thing and they pull it out of the sheath and they go, I did this, you
Right.
know, and there's this self-confidence and this acceptance of themselves that they don't even maybe
Mm,
realize how important it is that they're getting from this, but they're getting it from us.
yeah,
And so they're more inclined to try something like this, and maybe they might go, metalwork isn't it.
for sure.
I realize that that's too hot and too noisy and too hard. What
Yeah.
I want to do is needlepoint, but I want to create something and finish something, and I want to chase that feeling, and I want that accomplishment, and I want to feel good about myself, and I want to contribute something to the world that is
Yeah.
greater than just me as an individual.
Those
And that's
intangible takeaways are so powerful because maybe it's not even like discovering a new craft. Maybe they just found a sense of confidence in themselves that they could take a hammer and forge on a hot piece of steel for an hour with an anvil hammer out of a dragon face, out of a dragon's mouth, But just like the intangibles that come with having those experiences that people honestly, I feel like we don't give enough credit to, those moments that are kind of like I was actually kind of referring to earlier is just like those stepping stone moments, in a way where you learn something that you never knew about yourself. It's like an
Mhm.
opportunity for like a form of self-discovery, almost in a way.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
wow, so cool.
that's what we see on repeat day after day, and the smiths that embrace that with their customers and really help bring those things out in people, they seem to do really well. And that's the big and the maybe the most rewarding part about this, and that's what I like to see is I like to see happy people that are leaving not just because they feel good about something they purchased off the wall or whatever, but because of what they've done in their contribution to
Yeah,
selves. That makes me feel like when our customers are leaving like that, as an owner, as a person who's brought this to life out of his mind, that makes me sleep well at night. Or actually,
yeah.
sometimes it keeps me up with excitement. What to do next, and maybe ruins my sleep a little bit, but I think that's all worth it, and I think it's worth it for the craft, and that's the other thing that I wanna do is, like, if we don't have people bringing beginners into this, then it
Mm,
all goes away, and that was something I didn't wanna see. I like what Forged in Fire is, and I know that there's been conversations on all sides of the spectrum as to the good, the bad, the ugly
right,
of
right, right.
show is, and I know that there are some of us that have just made good out of it on um, on repeat, which is I think is really great, and not everyone has been able to do that. But what I'd hate to see is for that momentum to really bring this craft to the forefront of pop culture in the time period it was, and then just die out, and it wasn't like didn't rebuild a craft.
Sure.
If it was just 15 minutes of fame for all of us,
Right.
and then it's done and we all struggle, we've got grinder companies that have popped up out of it, belt companies that have grown bigger,
Yeah.
equipment providers, Lawrence, like Maritime Knife Supply,
Yeah.
and that guy is so supportive. Like he is, like you're right. Your intros, anything that you need, that guy will get you, even if you don't have it. You might not even know you need it, but he will find something that will help you solve a problem.
Yeah.
And I want to see those people and these things and the craft unfold. We talked about Josh Prince and the work that he does, the work that you do with uncovering patterns in steel. Um, that all can go away. Like imagine if if that was all knowledge that you just held yourself, and then what, in 2 generations or 10 generations or 20 generations, we hope that somebody re-uncovers your work and finds your
Right.
labor back to life again. Or can we stepping stone and build out, and maybe now we're able to build way cooler things than they were building 1,000 years ago. And that's important. It's important for human brain development, for humanities development, for the crafts development to keep people engaged and moving forward.
Totally.
And and so I see my part of it as just like the spark, you know.
For sure.
The people I work with aren't ready to do high-end pattern welded steel today, but they might be in 5 years. You might
Sure.
have people who become customers of yours in 5 years that are taking your classes on this, and their first thing was hammering a spike out of the mouth of a fire-breathing dragon.
Sure. Right. Well, and I it's just the impact. I keep thinking about the impact that you're having on people, and just like and how invaluable, like you said, a lot of booths they could just like buy something off that's hanging on the wall or whatever, that's flashy or looks cool or fits their look or whatever. But to swing a hammer in that kind of environment, it's not just like in somebody's backyard or something. Like you've
Yeah,
created this whole world
yeah,
that they get to step into and be
yeah,
part of that for a little bit. But like I said before, whether or not they actually do anything with knives or any other craft afterward, but just like the things that they potentially are unlocking for themselves in regards to their confidence or their ability, like uh yeah, just like how they perceive themselves and how that is something they'll carry with themselves for the rest of their lives
yeah,
is tremendous to me. I think that's so cool because I could make a really great knife and somebody can use it and it might be the best knife that they'll ever use, but what is that really like? It's affecting them outwardly. It's n But what you're doing is, like, making deep, like, intrinsic change potentially inside of some of these people who are having these experiences, which is fucking rad. I think that's so cool. I love
yeah. Which that's why you got to come guest smith. Like,
that. I
come hang
want to.
out, do some things, you know. Yeah, it's a, it's like it really is. It's worth it. It's challenging, and, like, if you're gonna do the
I'm
long day,
sure.
if you wanna play around for a couple hours with some people, and I do whatever, like, when Jay Nielsen came out, he did 2 swords a day and 4 daggers, so he only had to do 6 items a day,
Yeah.
and our guys, so just as a comparison, like, S Sam and Eric Rivers, so Eric Rivers was on Fafnir one day, and I think they each had 10 sword days, just in swords.
Yeah.
But, like, I give these coins out to my
Mm,
crew when they
yeah.
hit certain numbers. So you get a coin when you hit 40 experiences a day. So you had 40 customers that
Whew.
day, you get a 40 coin. I got a guy that's hit 60.
That's insanity.
That's what many were doing. So we got 6 dragons in Texas. Think about that. 6 dragons in Texas, they're on an average doing 40 apiece.
Right.
So yeah, 240. We usually do somewhere between like 220 and 250 people a day in Texas. And
Wow, that's
it's like a
amazing.
it's almost 12 hours of forging. It's exhausting. And the guys that come and work and they do this, they commit, most of them commit for the whole 8 weeks, or they might do 7 weeks, or they might do
Sure.
like what Scott Mullins, he does all but one day. So, and it's Saturday, Sunday. So they work a full-time job all week, or they're a knife maker all week, and then they come and they work Saturday and Sunday, and they work these long ass draining jobs, juggling people,
Right.
doing 4 people at a time from the time cannon goes off until they shut down
Oh,
our
that's
area.
so interesting. Okay, so the festival's just on the weekends. So what do you like? Yeah, what are you doing during the week?
Me, so
Or is it
mm,
just like you're tidying up, maintaining stuff at the stables and
yes,
all that? And
yeah, most of
yeah,
what I do now is Um, I do work some of the positions. Most of the time, if I'm working, I'm running a grinder.
okay, yeah,
There's maybe one other person in the company as fast as me on the grinder now, and I hate grinding. It's my least favorite thing to do.
Sure.
But I'm very fast now because look, just imagine 6 dragons. They all have 4 people on them, and in 45 minutes, I'm gonna have 24 knives now to finish.
Holy shit. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a guy that I grind with. I grind with a bunch of different people. One of the guys in the company, he's been with us since 2020, and I teach people to grind in pairs. So we tag team and we swap each other's belts and we do things for each other and we work
Mm,
different grits. And if you get in a sync and a cadence, you can work really fast. So Dustin and I, when we work together, we have an average of I think 2 minutes and 11 seconds per rail spike knife, start to finish, done.
right. Wow.
But we work them in batches of like I don't know. We'll work on 8 of them at a time.
Sure.
And how does that even work? It's really difficult for me to explain it right now. But we I just swear that we have a system and it works really well. And that's the thing is like so you I I analyze I did user experience as a professional designer. So I think about
Right.
dopamine drops
Okay.
and everything that we do to organize and create the flow of our company is all based on um, balancing expectations and managing dopamine hits.
Okay.
So step number one is like you're already hearing or seeing, you're seeing the dragon heads at the top of our buildings from a ways away, and you hear the ting of the anvil, and you're like, oh my God, is that a thing? Oh, we're getting near to the forge, and the closer you get, it intensifies. And so you turn the corners of these things, and you walk into this hallway of dragons, and you're in these stables, and these beasts are on either side, and the flames are kicking, and so your excitement's peaking. But then there's a line that you have to wait in to get signed up. So then you're like having to pace yourself and you're bringing that back down and getting in the line and you sign up for this thing and you pick out these items. Like, I want this, I'm going to do this knife and I'm going to put this rune on it and I'm going to forge this little thing and I'm going to get my ticket. And you get your ticket and you get your piece of steel. And guess what? Now you got to wait for your time slot. But you've got this and you're like, I'm ready, I'm so ready. So by the time you get there, you're like amped to go. You got your ticket, you got your steel, you hand it to your guy, and he's like, are you ready? Safety speech. And he goes through this little safety speech of what
Yep.
we have to do, and they have to heat up. So now we're waiting and we're pacing them again. And then finally they get to do the hammering. So there's this first really big dopamine release there. And where that is usually it, if you make a purchase at a stand, you come in, you look, you're like, ooh, I want that. You buy it, and then it's over. That's it.
Right.
You've done the dope. You've done it all within like 5 minutes. So you're getting this dopamine release, but you're getting it in the hammering section, and you're getting it during physical activity. So
Yeah.
it does something a little bit different with your brain. It's a lot more substantial in that moment, and we don't just try to process people as fast as we can.
Sure.
We want them, if you got a 45-minute session, we want it to take 45 minutes. We want you to get 45 minutes of hammering. We're not trying to kick you out after 15 minutes and then
Right.
bring you.
Right.
So you'll do the thing, and then after you're done, you get your take your pictures with your forge thing. And some people it looks a little turd-like, and some people it looks pretty close. It depends on how good at following directions you are. And then
Sure.
we take the piece and we with your ticket and we take them back to the grind shed and we go, okay, come back and pick them up, whatever the schedule is for however fast our grind shed is working.
Yeah.
And then we bring them back to the front and they come back and they're like, we've got the text. And our text is like, hey, your thing is ready. Come pick it up at the Dragon Forge. So they come back to our booth.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a waiting period,
Yeah.
and it really helps us in the areas that we're in because now, like in Texas, we're at the back of the Renfest, which is traditionally the worst place to be for business. But with us, they've got to come back. They'll come in, they'll sign up, then they got to come back for their time slot, then they got to come back to pick up their knife. So they're going to be in our spot either for one really long time or 3 different times,
That's
which
so
means that
interesting. That's gotta
yeah.
affect the flow of the show, the
So
event as well.
our circle was a dead circle, a new circle that nobody really wanted to be there, and they were trying to put people in these spots.
Yeah.
All of all of the vendors on that circle by week 6 had come over, shook my hand, thanked me for showing up, and asked me if I would open up a business in another Ren Fair with them anywhere else. They're like, anywhere else you are,
Yeah.
we would also like to be. And
I believe
I've
it.
had a couple of them were like, we were trying to leave the circle, but now we're not moving. The lemonade vendor doesn't want to move. The the guy who sells like fried Czech food, he was in a temporary stand. He this last year he built a permanent building. After we showed up, he's like, permanent building, we are staying here. And that guy feeds us for free. He's like, whatever you guys want.
That's
Oh,
great.
we brought that much business. The knife guy across the way, Pakistani knives, he sells a ton of knives now. He's like, oh my God, we have so much more business than we've ever had back here.
Yeah.
That had been open for 3 years and was like kind of a dead zone.
Yeah.
So it does, it impacts the business, and it impacts it in a way that is really positive, because what we do is we're like, hey, are you hydrated? No? Lemonade over here. You tired? Have you eaten yet today? Food over there. Go ahead and shop for a little bit while you wait for your knives. Get yourself a beer. There's mead right over there. So we
Yep.
point people to these other vendors because, once again, I'm not here. I don't want to be a part of a business that is just here for just the self-serving needs of my own business.
Right.
It's got to be good for the community
Yeah.
in the area that I'm around. And if I can share the love around that cul-de-sac in that circle, and I can grow the backside of that festival for the fair, that gives a deeper pull to the back, then they can open up or buy more or expand out in the future. So, and they've started to realize that just within 2 seasons of being in Texas,
God, that's so
uh,
interesting. Because
so
like you could show up at a new festival and you'd be like, we don't give a fuck where you put us. It
I don't
doesn't
care.
matter. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter because
we've
they're
never
gonna come
picked
to
a good
us.
spot for the festival. Yeah, yeah,
Give us, in fact, put us in
us
your
it's
worst spot.
here, put us in your worst spot. Where do you want to see the most improvement to your traffic flow? Yeah, because we also do something very different, in that we pre-book our spots.
Yeah.
So 2/3 to 3/4 of our availability is available online. So in Texas, we leave 1.5 dragons open for walk-ins, sometimes almost two.
Yeah.
Now with Warhammers, it's not a full 2 dragons. In Arizona, we have 3 dragons, so we only book 2 online. So if we
Okay.
look fully booked online, that doesn't mean you can't get in. It
I
just
see.
means that we're reserving walk-in room because not everybody knows about us. Not everybody plans that far ahead, and we want for people to be able to just go, hey, do I have a shot at getting in today? Yes, you do. If you get in right away, you can get a spot and we'll put you in. And
Yeah.
then also, if we have a smith that's sick or gets in an accident on the way in and we don't have time to replace him, we're not so far up a creek that we can't deliver on our promises.
Sure.
So you have to
Dude, that's
cover
so
those
great.
bases as well. So yeah,
I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it also sounds very fulfilling.
yeah, it is a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot, but
Yeah.
it does feel good at the end of the day. It feels good. It feels good in a couple different ways. One of the surprising things, and one of the things that I like is, I call it, I kind of call it personal grit, and what I try to work on with the employees and the people that come into the fold that work with us, and we have this approach with our customers. Even though we try to make the job, or forging a knife, we streamline it for them. It's still not easy. I mean,
Sure.
it it is,
I
but
imagine the Smiths have to jump in a bit.
a lot. Yeah, it's a very difficult job for them, and it's a really difficult job for a grinder because when you got 24 knives dropping every 45 minutes to an hour, you're only standing like this all day long,
Yeah, that's
fully
terrible.
locked. You're locked in. It is really bad for a body,
Yeah.
and um, and they do it, and they crank, and so I celebrate when they aren't hard on for easy. And and anytime somebody's like, "Oh, I did it this way," and I'm like, "Why did you do that? Why did you not do it the right way?" "Well, I thought it was easier." And I'm like, "Did I ask you to do it easier? Did I?" Then I'm like, Did I say, hey, try to figure out how to do this the easiest way possible? Because that isn't like sometimes the way that we have to do things to do them right or well or
Yeah.
to the fullness of to get the most out of it, you can't take the easy route. And
Right.
so I try to condition at least the people who work for me to a mindset of not accepting easy as the ultimate solution to
Sure.
the end, because like that just isn't the truth,
Yeah.
and it's
Nope.
not as
I agree.
fulfilling.
Yeah.
It takes
Ah, so
grit.
it
It takes fucking grit to do it the hard way.
takes 60 grit,
It takes
36
60
grit,
grit, it takes 36 grit,
120,
it takes a couple fingers.
couple push sticks.
We go through a lot of push sticks. We make a lot of push sticks, but we go through a lot of hammer handles, so we never have it. We have an endless supply of push
Oh,
sticks.
that's a great point.
Yeah,
That's so funny. No, yeah,
yep.
yeah.
We
God, I
buy
can't imagine.
fucking handle material like crazy.
Yeah.
New hammer
I've never
bases.
hung a hammer head
Really?
before.
No
Yeah, or
shit.
an axe head or anything. I've never done that before. I've seen it done a few
Yeah.
times. Never done it
You know
myself.
what? When weekend number one of Texas this year, we had a guy, uh, uh, Elijah, uh, Elijah White. Is that his last name? I don't know. He listens. He listens to the podcast.
Okay.
This guy, I don't know. We call him Isha. We just kind of like. Anyhow, he's 18, just out of high school.
Okay.
And he's a great new maker. By the way, really beautiful work. I can't believe what 18-year-olds are doing these days. I feel embarrassed.
Yeah, for real, right?
The guy is just he's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he gets in and I'm like, okay, more hammers are ready. And he goes, I've never hung a hammer. And I'm like, oh, great, it's easy. We're gonna do it now. In fact, we're gonna do two of them, and then we're gonna do two more in the next hour. So, and he's like, I've also never ground a war hammer. And I'm like, okay, no problem. All we have to do is clean up everything. So just like you just get the grinder out and you're like, here's the fast way to do it. You do the things, you got that, and then he does the second one. Like, okay, let's go to the handles and let's figure out how to do the fit up on these and do the
Yeah.
wedge. By the end of the Ren Fair, the guy had done like 120 war hammers.
Holy shit.
It was nuts. There were days that Scott Mullins was forging 14, 15. I don't know if he ever got to 16, but he was forging like 14 war hammers in a day.
Wow.
Customers. And so I don't know. I don't know if Elijah did 120 over the festival, but I would say he probably did 60, 70 easy, maybe more,
Yeah,
because he did.
wow.
There were other people there too. But swords. We did so many swords. Those were I made so many mistakes in the design on that handle.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
Yeah, it just like the geometry of the butt end of it and putting those pins in, and I tried to make a top and bottom tool to peen those over, and it worked
Oh,
okay. They got look it. The cool thing is the crew got through it and they did it. They made it work. I did adjust the pattern. One of the issues that we had is that the castings didn't matter where we got the castings from. There were always two holes slightly off. So
ugh.
what I did is I redesigned the pattern we were getting because essentially we have this paddle shape
Yep.
and the handle's done and we don't let them touch the handle.
Right.
So they just start heating up the end, elongating the sword, making the shape, and then they quench it. And we're using 4130 chromoly. That's what
Sure.
Baltimore Knife and Steel uses for their all the jousters use it, which was kind of cool for me to find out that when I was looking at it, I'm like, hey, I called New Jersey Steel Baron at some point. I'm like, I need a steel that I can water quench, not temper, and it will still spring. And Pete Pete Bruno was like, can I call you back? Anyhow, we finally settled on chromoly, but and it's working quite well. I actually can't. I, I I just can't believe what chromoly is. I don't know what I was talking about before. I'm going to talk about chromoly now because it's surprisingly springy. I can't believe
Okay.
what you could do with this shit. So you can beat the fuck out of it, forge it to shape, heat the motherfucker up, quench it down into water. You can use super quench to like really do it, and it does that like crazy cool
Oh yeah,
sound.
sure.
And then you can still kind of like if it warps, you can hammer on it right out of the quench of that water tank, and it is like it does not want to straighten up. I mean, you'll have, like beat the fuck out of it a little bit, be a little heavy-handed with it,
Yeah.
and it'll go. Um, but then this stuff stays springy. Like you can boom.
Right. Wild.
It's not its edge retention isn't as good as obviously a 1060 or 1075 sword, but 4130, I'm just still kind of blown away. Jay Nielsen was like, I'm gonna I'm gonna destructive test these. I'm
Sure.
like, use use the example one that I made first. I need to know that it can survive because I haven't done that destructive of tests with it. We were not selling this as a this can survive the
Battle
whole.
ready.
No, we
Chopping
were.
pigs up.
This is an Iron Age sword. We are making it out of low carbon. This is not like this is just the experience of a sword.
Right.
And he's like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of this thing. And
Yeah, I could
he's
see him doing that.
he's he's doing the testing and we're like doing 2x4 chops and like and he does he's like, I'm gonna do coconut. We're cutting coconut with it. I'm like, I don't think we should cut coconut with it, Jay. I don't. It's 4130. It's like this is like a jacked up rail spike, I think. And he's like, yeah, well, like it's not really all that fun unless you have something challenging, right?
Okay.
Fine. No problems. Like going straight through coconuts
Yeah.
pretty well. And then Edge held up and he was like fine slicing pineapples after doing the destructive test. And
Hmm.
he's after we were done, he goes, I don't know why they've never used the show on the steel, or the steel on the show, but I hope they never if they keep the show going, I don't ever want to like you can't break this thing.
Right. Wow.
So
That's wild. I don't know anything about 4130.
I don't it must be
I've
that
heard of 4140, but that's usually like for hammers or something like
yeah,
that, right?
it's it's usually for hammers, and that's
Or
what I was
dies, forging
like,
dies.
yeah. But yeah, Chrome Ollie for you can get it on Sencut Sen has it available in multiple sizes. So a lot of the stuff that we do now, I'll get like, if we're gonna do a new cool dagger, and the cutlass that I'm gonna do
Yeah.
is 4130 from Sencut Sen. And I'm just like honestly just kind of like surprised. And I know it's in an age where everybody's just like super steals and
Right,
let's
right,
do
right.
all this crazy nutso stuff, and I'm like, wait a second, how how low can we go on the carbon still? Like, still get away with this shit, you know?
Sure.
So I mean, it's kind of cool, and it actually really, I think, my tour around European uh, museums this year really got me thinking about carbon content and the mystery of the effectiveness of it. And obviously carbon is important in
Right.
the world, but geometry, there are other things that can help.
Geometry
It's
makes
huge.
such a huge difference. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
that's fun.
There's a whole weird shift going on in my head, this year
Yeah.
about what what's important to me in uh, both blade making, legacy, and stuff like that. So
It's good
uh,
stuff to keep in mind and stuff to think about. And again, also the impact that you have on people, how you support your family, but also how you are helping people to discover things for them about themselves through
yeah.
these experiences. It's super cool. I really like it a lot. I'm like I was already interested in it, and now I'm like, this sounds like I want to go do this. And Maybe I'll quit custom knifing. No, I'll just I'll always make custom
Don't
knives,
do
but
that, dude. It is it's really fun to make custom knives, and the work
yeah,
you do is incredibly important to the world that we work in. So,
yeah.
but definitely still come out and play, and
I
vice versa. What I need to do is step away from doing this a little bit, and I really want to take a pattern steel classroom. I'd really like to work with you and make something because I've been really hesitant to get into anything out of simple pattern
Oh, sure.
molding. And I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. I just don't want to admit what it is. And the thing that I can't admit is that I don't know that I have the attention to perfectionism detail that you have, to stack up in a line and keep my world organized. I
But
have a lot of fuck it, let's just throw it in and see what happens.
but the attention that you pay to even just like the organization of the dragon build, like that you're breaking that down into little parts, right? And it's
Yeah.
very you're very thoughtful about that. My process and my approach and how I label bars when I'm cutting them up and all this, it's I've tried to dumb it down as much as I possibly can. Not only so it's teachable to other people, but for myself, because I have made so many mistakes by trying to overcomplicate things or overthink things, and then I forget where I'm at, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't all this kind of shit. I was making, like I said, I've made tons of mistakes. The reason I'm so good is because I've fucked up a lot, and I'm trying to reduce those mistakes and learn from past mistakes by simplifying things. And so yeah, if honestly, if I come down and we're hanging out and I don't know what the festival looks like or if things can happen when it's closed, but if you have the
Texas can.
okay,
North Carolina and Arizona, um, they only let people who work for it there, and like probably sort of technically, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be in Texas too. But
I gotcha.
Texas, they've been really gracious with me bringing in other people. It's like, but once again,
Sure.
it's like NBC was like, "Oh my God, let's do a thing." So we've gotten a lot of good exposure
Yeah.
there, and they would, I would imagine somebody there would want to interview you as well or be around for that.
Oh, I'm not even worried about that. I'm thinking about you and me working together and maybe taking
That
some
would,
time to make some steel.
yeah,
If we got
that'd be
if we
great because
got
I get,
if
you
we
have
got
a
the
press
troll
there.
there, yeah,
Yeah,
if
we
you
got,
got
yeah,
then let's
12 ton,
do it.
12
Or not
tons good.
the dwarf, not the troll, the
Yeah,
dwarf.
I don't know. You could be a troll.
Yeah, no, we can make it happen with the 12-ton. We could make some fun stuff.
And those forges get they get hot. They're good.
Yeah.
They'll do the thing.
What style forges are they? They're Venturi
They're
burners.
Ventures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not that big inside. Well, I say that, and the truth is that's all changing because I used to just use one burners because that was all the size we really needed. But
Yeah.
now we're expanding our offering, so we've got one that's 23 inches deep. Yeah, it's going so crazy. I made a dragon with a mouth that you can shove a fucking sword down, and
Yeah. The sword swallower
yeah,
in
not
all
like
the best ways.
building it out, yeah, in all the good ways. It's all, everything's consensual here. Uh, the one I was working on today is also now 23 inches deep, but I've got a
Yeah.
two burner over where the press is. So the one I have to finish up tomorrow, the one that's on the remote, that
Oh, yeah,
one's a
sure.
two burner, so we can do like slightly longer stuff in there. But
Sure.
the limitation is that I can't, once I build the dragon, you can't open the back
Oh.
because the way that I have to run the propane lines is not off
Yep,
the
yep.
side, which is the safer way. So I seal off the backs.
Yep.
So whatever the depth of that forge is, that's it. We can't make anything longer than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the little trade-offs that you have to do for safety, you know.
Yeah. And so when are when are you at the different locations? So you have 3 different locations, right? And when are you at those different locations? And then there's also the
Right.
Bavarian.
Yeah, that one's open year round. So we're 363 days a year there.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we ended up buying a house up there, like 4.5 miles from the shop, a
Oh, wow.
second house, because we were spending so much on hotel rooms. Our tax guy is like, you need to buy a house.
Right.
So we put a lot of we send a lot of Smiths up from so we do
Oh,
our
okay.
anyone who's new and we do a little retreat now where we bring our Smiths from all our locations. We go, hey, come to here, and we actually end up this last year we had to rent two other houses as well to put
Sure.
everybody up in, and we did training for the upcoming season, um, and
Oh,
so we
with,
did.
like, the Warhammer and the swords and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we did, like, uh, all the grinders had to forge rail spike knives, and then all the smiths had to grind rail spike knives, like, they did role reversal so they could,
Sure.
like,
So they
understand the
so they
challenges
underst
of
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's smart, that's
so
good.
we put them through the paces, we timed the grinders, so all the grinders got to team up and into two-person teams, and then they each got handed 4, forged out pieces,
Yeah.
and, uh was kind of like the teams, whoever finished forging the fastest or had the best pieces, they got to um, pick their 4 random knives first, so they could pick better knives to like give them a better shot of grinding better in
Mhm.
the grinding challenge. So yeah,
Yeah.
we do a thing there, but and then any if we have smiths that join up after the retreat or outside of that, we will send them up to Frankenmuth to do training before Ren Fair because it's pretty crazy, when you're like the pace is it's not necessarily easy to just snap your fingers and get into, but if
Right.
you're a smith, it's not that bad. Like Justin Hammond, he's been on Forge and Fire. He joined us. Eric Rivers knows what he's doing. He
Yeah.
joined us. We have Shane DeVoy, Candy Mountain Forge. Love this guy so much. He joined us, and he's wasn't much of a knife forger. He's a blacksmith, you know
Okay.
um, and he just does great. And he runs our sort of our Vulcanjag, our Viking kind of dragon in Texas, and he's got that Texas drawl, and he's tall, and
Oh.
he's just like he's like this dreamboat of a blacksmith guy. And I'm like, like, he just randomly showed up weekend one, last year, and
Right.
and he was like, "This is so cool" as a customer, and
Oh, I got you.
and he was like, "I can't even talk." Because I was like, "Well, you want to work here, maybe?" And he couldn't even. He was like barely spitting words out. He was so excited. So he's like, I have to leave." And he regrouped overnight, came back on Sunday, and I had an interview with him, and I was like, "Okay, you're hired, and I'd like you to start next weekend, or
Yeah.
like in a couple hours if you would like." And so he worked Texas, Arizona, and then Texas again. Really great dude. It's been really nice to get to know him and his work, and all these guys like that come out and do the thing. I really have a lot of respect for them. Um,
Yeah.
the challenge that it is to do that is pretty cool. Some of them have really great personalities, like Scott Mullins. I met him at a knife show in Texas. Knew was open in there, so I had to go to knife shows in the area to figure out who
Sure.
would work the job. So I started doing those. So I saw him at Texas Select, and he just had, odd, interesting stuff that he made on the table, knives and things. And his personality was just like there,
Right.
and you've got to have that when you're a showsmith, because we're not really demos. I studied demos. I thought
Yeah.
about being a demo smith. And what I realized, the demo smith holds people. We used to time, my wife and I would time them. And the average time people will watch a demo is 6 minutes. And they will put under $5 in a tip jar.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, a lot of times a demo smith, which I did demos for a while, I would have somewhere between 40 and maybe $100.
Okay.
I can get that from one rail spike, and I can do 4 rail spikes with people in 35 minutes. So in
Wow.
in in an hour, I can do almost. $800 worth of rail spike knives. So that math, David can actually
And so yeah, I was gonna come back to David and how so is he working as a forger at some of these, or is he help
do.
with the design and artwork, or what's he
Yeah,
what's David's part in all this?
he's our we I think we technically call him our marketing director.
Oh,
Uh,
that makes sense because he's a great content creator.
oh yeah, absolutely. And so he's taken over most of our video production. He doesn't get out to as many locations as I do, so I shoot a lot of the footage and send it to him, and
I
he
got you.
does
Yeah.
the editing. But I try to get him out as much as possible. But he's about to have him and Chloe are due pretty soon with
Oh,
their
right.
so I wasn't able to bring him to Texas this time, but he usually spends a week with me before each festival now, and we do it. We just like mad tag team art layer. So
I got you.
yeah, but this last year in Texas, we made, oh my God, we did, I think it's something like 28 wooden dragon heads that we carved. Now, a handful of them, like 20, I think like 20 some of them had been I had one of my guys, Kyle, had like already put a bunch of 2x4s together and traced the patterns. And so
Oh, I see. I kind of
what
roughed
Dave
it in.
and I were doing, we took angle grinders with heavy disc on them, 36 grit flappers, and
Sure.
we did like gouge relief carvings with the things to make the knot work and the dragon heads and things.
Yeah.
And 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 we did that. We did a big mural on the back of one of the buildings. I came up with a few funky like face pieces. I smashed the fuck out of I can't fully bend my finger all the way anymore from that trip because
Oh,
uh,
shit.
yeah, I injured that. We ended up naming that dragon Bone Crusher.
Okay.
It like split my fingernail is still actually you can see how messed up it is still.
Oh, yeah. Ouch.
Um,
Oh,
but
fuck.
it's like a floating chip. My bone broke across the finger this way,
Ugh.
and then this knuckle got smashed, and both of these knuckles still hurt quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't forged with customers since I broke this in September because I can't safely hold a pair of tongs
Right.
still. Uh, but yeah, we made this pit. It was like 6 foot wooden dragon head that went on the center of that main building in Texas,
Yeah.
and it was really cool. Like the knot work, he's so good at knot work and creating that Norse Viking
Sure.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
And me, every time I tried it, it like he lovingly makes fun of me that I just make um like what does he call what did he call this last one? It's like Aztec. So
Oh,
it ends up being like the Aztec, almost like tiki Aztec world.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know, like weird sort of like I don't know. I have like a weird aesthetic for when I just make my own stuff, not inspired by
Yeah.
other things. I don't know why, but my stuff tends to come out a little bit on the Aztec side, which
Okay.
I don't care. I actually really enjoy ancient Aztec and Mayan artwork. I think their glyphs and their picturesque way of speaking is
Right.
really impactful. It's their graphical representation is really cool. I like how if they have a square
I mean, you could
around.
make a Quetzalcoatlus.
That's exactly what I'm working on. That one that I'm working on is based off of that. So
Oh.
today I put feathers on. Um, I'm trying to see if I have a because I can maybe send you a video real fast.
So
You can pull it.
Quetzalcoatlus, for people who don't know, comes from, is it Mayan or Aztec mythology? I can't remember which one.
I thought it was Mayan.
And it's basically it's a winged serpent. It's their kind of like godhead or like their main god of their mythology
It's
that
in your
brought like all knowledge and information and like how to farm and build and all that kind of like all kinds of crazy wisdom to them, to that group of people. You said you just emailed it?
It's in your Instagram message.
Okay, I'll find it.
Um,
What else can
it's
you tell us about the Quetzalcoatlus?
okay. Of its history, nothing, maybe, other than what it looks like. But what I can tell you about the one that I'm building is that I had my glassblower buddy who does our eyes also make 20 some, maybe 30 glass spikes. And we're bondoing the glass spikes onto the metal body. And then I will use this high temp sculpting, high temp, high strength sculpting product called Paltaya that was developed during the Lord of the Rings era. Um, and I will then make like dragon skin type lumps and stuff that kind of blend it in. And they're just like really beautiful, bright colors that I'm doing. It looks sort of like, and I'm terrible at saying that, Quetzalcoatl, however you say that. It's
Quetzalcoatlus. Or
Quetzal,
Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzal.
Quetzalcoatlus is a name of a dinosaur. Quetzalcoatl is the name of the god.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mix of that and the what's the snake thing from Beetlejuice? The
Oh, the
the,
sandworm?
the sandworm. It kind of looks a little bit like a
I
cross
got you.
between those two worlds. And I don't know. It's a fun thing.
Super cool. I'm trying to see if I can slide through and find some progress photos of the dragon, that shows kinda like that 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 skin or I don't know, that material you were just talking about that was developed.
Oh
Oh, here
yeah.
we go. I think this one. Here we go. Alright, I'll pull this in right now. And you said you sent that picture to, my Instagram messages?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it with just the like rough skin.
Yeah, and the eye,
Yeah.
like, the way you're able to form it around it and everything, I see more claw
Mhm.
marks around the eye. That's
Yep.
cool. And then the beak, like, I love the beak.
Steel. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, "What is happening here?" When I saw this, I was like, "This is
Yeah.
insanity."
That's so cool. We sculpted that at midnight.
Yeah. You sculpted it at midnight.
Yeah, it was like, dude, the days when I come out here to work, I wake up, I'm working until yeah, see, it was midnight. We had to use spotlights.
It's so good. It's so cool.
Of course, the night we sculpted it, we didn't do the eyes yet. We did those the next day.
Wait, right.
Mm-hmm. Then paint it. Yeah, that one's still here. We built that last year.
Oh,
So
here we go. I got it pulled up. Let's see.
see,
Alright, hold on, let me pull this in. Sorry, I just, like, went totally silent for a second. Um, I love that. Let me get this pulled in.
I can talk about Paltaya while you pull that in. It's here it is. Okay, and we're gonna use some of it on here. So anywhere you see this aluminum foil, this is where I will be using a sculpting medium to get really organic shapes. And a lot of the steel that I've used in this build right here is covered with welder texture because that
Yeah,
gives the Paltaya product a little bit more to be able to hold on to and
yeah.
to really to
Dude,
stick to the steel surface plate.
yeah, the feathers are so cool. I love it. I love this whole thing. It's so smart.
Yeah,
What a
it's gonna be pretty cool.
That's fucking great.
I don't think I don't think in this video I may not we didn't have the glass spikes in place yet, but
Okay. Well, and the
yeah.
scale, I love the way you guys, like, build out the scales and all that stuff, and you said with the foil, you're gonna build up the clay on top of that, basically?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be able to like I used my daughter's uh 3D printer. I don't have a 3D printer. I'm sorry, I'm having some
How
issues.
dare you?
I know. How dare I not have one? So I've been using hers, and I love it. But hang on. Sorry about this. I'm just gonna change the angle a little. I've been using her 3D printer, and what I did is I created these dragon skin patterns on curved surfaces, and I kind of just take them and I push and I roll them into,
Oh, yes.
and it creates
Right?
repeatable skin patterns. And I
Yeah.
have different sizes of them, and some are rollers, like I've printed cylinders,
Yeah.
and um, and and so I can have like bigger clunky ones and little ones to be able to get this very authentic instead of just painting the skin scales on flat sheets.
Yeah.
Because what I used to do is I used to take the flatter sheets, and to try to make them a little less boring and flat, I would paint them with the Rust-Oleum hammer texture paint, and that
Okay.
created skin stipply feel
Right.
to the steel. And also it protected it from rust, which everything rusts while I'm working on it in South Carolina. So
Sure.
like there was a bonus to doing that. But now with this product, I'll fabricate up and I'll get the base shape, and then I can take this and mix it up. And it's weird. It's sort of like somewhere in between, or like central to. If you did a Venn diagram, you would have cement over here, and you would have fiberglass over here, and you would have
Oh,
like modeling clay down here,
I got
and
you.
sort of in between all of those, and it's none of those three things, but it's all of those three things.
I
It's
got
sort of,
you.
I don't know, it's like the weird mysterium of God, right? It's three in one, but like not really. So, yeah, and I love it. It's, um, I wish I had the time to do and build projects like, Leah Arapach's work, where
Oh,
she's like,
yeah.
it's like, she gets in there and she sands all the details, and it's all steel, and it's
Yeah.
well, it's so beautiful.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's just like mind-blowingly cool characters, really wonderful organic shapes. But we talked about that earlier too, is the time it takes to get to that goodness level. But even the goodness level that she doesn't do that in 15 minutes. She doesn't. One of those sculptures isn't done in a day or 3 days.
No,
So uh,
definitely not.
with 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 all the stuff that I juggle on these, I found that, yeah, the stuff that she puts out, damn,
It's so intense.
yeah, the
The
spikes are
textures
so
are
good.
so good.
Mhm. Yeah, the depth and complexity that she builds stuff up in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I can do any of that, or that I have, but I can do more than what I'm doing, and I was finding that as I was getting better and more complicated at moving steel, the longer it was kind of taking me. It was kind of that weird thing of like I'm getting better, but it's
You
taking longer. Should, shouldn't I be getting faster even though I'm getting
right,
better?
because you're getting technically better, but because you're technically better, you're pushing yourself farther.
And this product nicely kind of bridges a gap for me that I
Okay.
didn't have, which is time. I just don't have as much time. We keep 4 locations running, and they take, even though we shut down one festival, we're immediately ramping up another one, and we always have the one location open, and I have 5 children, and
Yeah.
uh, so for me, getting some time back, I went from an average, just the head of one of these dragons used to take me at the fastest 3.5 weeks of
Whew.
just straight working on the head. There were times
Yeah,
that I was putting 60 hours of weld texture in just to like do the details on the head after I was
sure.
done fabricating the whole thing.
I think I remember seeing that on some of the early stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, this is too much. 60 hours to weld skin texture is more than I'm willing to commit in both. It's like the cost of argon alone on 60 hours of welding
Ugh,
is
right.
nuts.
Yeah.
So, um, so because that wasn't 60 hours of um, like standing in my garage thinking about it. That was almost 60 hours of trigger time. So I was going through bottles like
Oh God.
crazy.
Yeah.
And um and so this it was when David was still working at Cole. Christopher Menges from Way to Workshop came over and he did a thing there and he was talking about it. And David called me and he goes, "You got to try this stuff." So I
Oh
was like,
right.
"Fuck it." I just hit order on the website. This stuff showed up and I just started. I was like, I got 3 dragon heads at the time that and I had to make 6 and I had 3 more that were not far enough along and it was like I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
So I popped that box open and it's like, "You're gonna have to do the thing." And and I just started mixing it up. My kids came out, they helped me sculpt horns and stuff like that. Before I knew it, I had 3 dragon heads finished in 1 week.
Wow.
So it really
Gosh.
just like the truth is if I started Dragon Head today with nothing done, within 3.5 days, it can look like that orange one that we were looking at with all the
Holy
stars
shit, for real?
for real.
Wow.
Yeah, from the forge out of the box. I get the forge from the manufacturer, and
Yep.
as soon as and I don't weld anything onto the forges anymore. I have I take the bolts off and I put new plates on and I welded these plates so that I can
Mm.
take everything apart and I can maintain the inside of the forge of all these dragon heads can come apart. The top the head comes off, the bottom comes off, the back
Yeah.
thing. So I still make them interlocking. But yeah, it's about 3.5 days now, but easily within a week. Like I can screw around in
Yeah.
a week and get a head done now. So,
That's amazing.
but still not a dragon body. Like a whole dragon body, you're still looking at 4 weeks with the
Yeah.
head being 3.5 days.
Sure.
And then that's not 4.5 weeks where I'm going out there for 3 or 4 hours a day. That's full days.
Yeah. Ugh. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's
And the
really
scales
amazing.
already pre-cut. If I have to cut scales, yeah.
Hopefully Sandcut Sen's helping you with the
They
scales.
did. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They do custom quoting now too. They one of the guys wrote me this year and he goes, "You order a lot of stuff from us. You can just load up your cart and hit this button and then email it to me and I will save you a whole bunch of money." So, which is
Great.
really
That's
it
awesome.
saves sometimes like almost 20% is
Oh,
what
that's great.
yeah. So, 'cause, I mean, we're just ordering a ton of stuff. Like the
Yeah.
amount of stuff that we order from them is all of our room pendants we use decorative room pendants, and a lot of specialty items. I mean, we order a lot from them, and
Yeah.
I know it's gonna ship in 5 days. You know, I don't have to wonder about their production schedule. Whatever they do,
For sure.
it hits the mail that fast, and I can reliably do business around that.
Hell yeah.
So
Dude, we could talk, I'm sure, for
I
another
know,
3 or 4 hours.
really,
And there's so many more questions I have for you. But I know it's late for you, and we've already got 2.5 hours under our belt. I think we should call it good. But real quick, where so people can find you, they know Josh A. Weston on Instagram as well as the at Dragon Forge EXP. But where physically are they located and what times of the year?
Okay, so Frankenmuth, Michigan is at a mall called River Play Shops, and that is open 365 days a year, only closed on Christmas and New Year's Day, I think.
Okay.
Uh, and then the North Carolina Renaissance Festival that runs from every weekend in October and November.
Okay.
And the Texas Renaissance Festival um, in Houston. That is October and November as well. That ends Good Friday weekend. So that's closing weekend, and that's a 3-day weekend. And
Okay.
then the Arizona Renaissance Festival runs every weekend, February and March. So, and
Okay.
that's outside of Phoenix in Gold Canyon.
And that's where you're at right now.
That's where I'm at right now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that it opens on this Saturday. So I have 3 working days to get the rest of the way done.
Wow. And the dragons, when the festivals are done, the dragons stay there or they get loaded up?
Yeah, I now build them in place so that we can have more impressive dragons. We don't have to
Sure.
take them back part by part. And
Yeah.
now they're like bolted and built into the buildings.
Oh, cool.
Except for some of the old ones. The only ones I take away when we're done are the ones I'm retiring. So I
I got you.
retired the dragons in Arizona, and we kind of been, I'll be honest, I've been cutting a couple of the old dragons up and kind of reusing pieces and parts.
Franken dragon.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hopefully nobody will know, or maybe they will and they'll go, "Oh, hey, I see how you reused the old one, and I'm glad he exists because he was my favorite." Some people get very attached to their dragons. It's
Sure.
okay. I promise if I retire one of the dragons, I will bring a better dragon.
I believe you, and I'm excited for it. Josh, thank you so much, dude. I know you also have not been feeling very well lately, and you got so much on your plate. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit with me and chat and give me the opportunity to get to know you better, as well as anybody here listening in the podcast and in the live stream. I'm gonna just sorry, real quick. I just realized I also need to check the Patreon just to double check. There's nothing happening over there. But yeah, it's just I really appreciate you coming in here and giving us your time because what you're doing is really unique. What you're doing is having a real impact on people's lives, and and I think it's really cool. And I'm even more excited about it. Like I said before, even more excited about potentially coming and doing some work with you guys, and hopefully not just as long as everything goes like great or not even great, but as long as things go smooth, you know, maybe multiple times, because I do like the idea of doing more work like in person with people in that kind of environment, and yeah, and I just think it's really neat and I like it a lot. And I really admire you and all the work you're doing. And I appreciate you for being such a massive supporter of the Artisans of Steel podcast, the Patreon, and just like a great friend in general. Means a
Dude,
lot
absolutely my pleasure. Love it. Thanks for having me, man.
for sure. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to call it a good night. One last shout out to the sponsors, of course, Josh, as always, Josh Weston. You can find him on Instagram, Josh A. Weston, as well as at Dragon Forge EXP, which is Dragon Forge Experience. We have been talking about Russell Tinsley is Oozle Finch Beers. That's OOZLE Finch Beers on Instagram. Dan Hubbs at 66 Mountain Knives on Instagram and Facebook. Lawrence Lake is Maritime Knife Supply on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can go to maritimeknifesupply.com to get more any of your knife supply needs met. And finally, we have Gabe Fletcher of Anchorage Forge and Anchorage Brewing. Thank you to all the sponsors, all the Patreon supporters, and again, Josh, thank you so much. I
Dude,
appreciate you guys.
thanks, man.